Hello and welcome to Novel Not New, a True End podcast. We're a narrative gaming book club podcast where we pick one game every month and discuss it like a book club. I'm your host, Jennifer Uncle, and joining me as always, Six Detmar.
Hello, hello.
And joining us today is Niamh, who has been on a number of podcasts, like Around the Long Fire, Ghost Divers, that sort of thing. How are you doing, Niamh?
I'm doing all right. I'm getting over bronchitis, so, you know, if my voice sounds a little rough, that's part of it. But, yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, I do Ghost Divers. I guess I can, do the tiny bit here. Ghost Divers is an anime podcast. We're currently going through Nana, so if people like romance stuff, I guess check that out. Around the Long Fire is just Em and I reading classic stuff and then hanging out. Most of my video game talk goes there. Ornate Stairwells is my movie podcast that's pretty freewheeling. And then I also do Pondering Puton, which is a timed 30-minute, just kind of weird comedy hangout podcast. So, but those are my regulars.
Yeah, that's a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically for our opening segment, we like to ask folks what they've been up to in terms of, stories they've been getting into. But, since you have as many podcasts as we have, and yeah. I know that you do sort of similar check-ins in those, if there's anything you want to talk about at this moment, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean...
Story or not.
I feel like most of the stuff I do just end up talking about in other podcasts. The most recent, because I also have just a bunch of podcasts this week in particular, and I just got over being sick. So, I'm doing a lot of podcast prep work this week, but I have been occasionally reading some of Neighborhood Story, because the first volume of that was localized and came out. Which is an earlier work by Yazawa Ai, who did Nana, also did Paradise Kiss, which was actually a sequel to Neighborhood Story. So, one of the characters in this who's a kid is an older sister in Paradise Kiss. But I've been enjoying it. It's nice to see an earlier version of her style. It's a little bit looser. It's definitely cuter. The colors are so 90s, which I definitely enjoy. And yeah, I'm too early to have a sense of what the story is truly about, but it does seem and also more focused on when you're a kid and you have crushes on people, and then you start going through puberty, and then what a crush means changes. And so it seems it's sort of about that process of my whole idea of what it means to have attraction to someone is changing because I'm now going through puberty. So, but I've been enjoying it so far. I feel that's the big thing. I've also been playing Final Fantasy VIII, but I'm still super early, and once I get through more of it, I'm sure Em and I will talk a bunch, because it's Em's favorite game, so...
It's a great game. I ended up playing through it a few months ago, and I think it became my new favorite Final Fantasy. It kind of dethroned 7 in a few ways. I just really love Squall.
Yeah. I feel 10 and 10-2 will be hard to top for me, because I think they're just great games, and then also, I have that extra, I played them when I was younger you know, stat bonus. So, but I have been enjoying it so far. It's definitely of that like era of Final Fantasy in particular where the combat system is kind of just like there's all these weird peculiarities to the combat system, but also like none of them really matter because it's so easy. So yeah.
The one that kind of tripped me up when I played it is that leveling up can be a bad thing at times, and I got to a point where I had just leveled so high up without bringing my GFs to the exact same level that the end game was really difficult. But once I grinded a bit, I got over that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like it, because I feel like it was coming out around the same time as like Chrono Cross, which is my favorite game in general, and especially like if you're talking about PlayStation squarey like JRPGs. So and back then I chose Chrono Cross, and I feel like I still like Chrono Cross just has a more engaging combat system for me and I feel like it like tests you a little bit more, but it's purely like puzzle combat. Like there's no way to grind in Chrono Cross. You like literally just can't do it. You can grind for material, but that's it. Like your level is like fully gated by the bosses. In each boss you like actually do the level up, and then you'll get like these small stat boosts, but and like me playing that as a kid just like made me into somebody who thinks about like combat in a JRPG in a different way, where I'm like trying to strategize through it. So there's lots of stuff I love about like the Final Fantasy games at the time, but I play them like the combat is like truly not the thing for me at all in those games. It's like the story, the characters, those are all good. But yeah, the combat has like never, because it's just any time that like I would face any sort of, in any like RPG now, I face any sort of resistance, I'm like immediately thinking about the strategy before grinding, and I like resent it anytime I realize that the only solution is just to grind. But I feel like the especially like PlayStation era Final Fantasy, you really don't need to grind. They're just kind of easy. They want people to see the story, so which still works, but yeah. There's like I think there's some point in which you can like turn off random battles with some GF ability, and I'm kind of looking forward to that just to like start mainlining, you know?
Yeah.
So are you playing like a PlayStation copy?
I do have a PlayStation copy because I still have a PlayStation 2 like hooked up. But I've been playing it on the Steam Deck. So doing an emulation. So
gotcha.
Because it is still easier to just play something on the Steam Deck than go to the little CRT TV that I have my PlayStation 2 hooked up to, and then like play something on that. So but that is still a nice way to play. When I played Chrono Cross for Abnormal Mapping, I did it on that TV just the whole way through. So, but
yeah,
I
definitely know what you mean there. Like a few years ago, Kyrie bought me a RetroTink, and that basically lets me plug in retro consoles into the HDTV. You do lose a bit of the brightness and stuff like that, but there's something about playing on official hardware that just, like, really puts you in the mindset of when things came out.
Yeah, holding, like, the correct controller just feels nice to me. So, but the Steam Deck is nice to hold, too, but it still is just, like, a different experience.
Yeah. How about you, Six? What have you been up to?
So I picked up one thing to talk about, and I picked up a game called Stonks 9800. Now, with a name like Stonks, I set myself up for a Smucker's joke. I don't want to make one. With a name like Stonks, you would expect, like... It took a little... I don't know how it got on my radar in the first place, but I was looking at the page and looking at trailers and stuff to be sure, because it felt like, from the name, I was expecting it to be, like, you know, to the moon GameStop bro simulator, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of you know how there are like crypto fascists, as in like people who are secretly fascists. I feel like GameStop people are like you know, secretly crypto bros, so they're crypto bros. And I was worried about that. But what the game actually is like sort of a financial market game that's trying to emulate the style of a PC-98 game. It has a little bit of dating sim element, and it has a lot of stuff around like how being rich ruins your brain and also causes you to become a monster. But the story mode is not ready yet. So I was just doing the free play and seeing the events and being like, this is interesting. I can't really do this for a novel not new. It's not enough.
Yeah.
But what I have been playing that has story to talk about is I've been playing a work in progress, you know, pre-alpha ROM hack by abnormal mapping community member Sniper Serpent. This is a Fire Emblem Shattered Kingdom is the name of the project. So this is a ROM hack of Fire Emblem Sacred Stones on the Game Boy Advance. And basically it is, it's inspired by part of Three Kingdoms, or Romance of the Three Kingdoms, if that's how you know it. Specifically, there is a part in the story where one of the wives of, I believe it's a Yuan Shu, just sort of gets murdered without really knowing what's going on. And Sniper Serpent found it evocative enough to sort of take that idea and also general affection for Three Kingdoms and write a story about the... Let me pull up my notes here, 1 second. The Rethrum Empire and the dying days of the Capella dynasty and all this stuff. It's very Three Kingdoms. But fantasy. You get a centaur.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, like this wife of Yuan Shu who just kind of died without knowing what the fuck was going on, you are playing Lady Cilia, who is the like sister of Lord Holloway, who is a regional governor. There's a uprising. It is put down, but in the process, a usurper takes over the throne. A bunch of, you know, regional lords, including Lord Holloway, are like, we're going to come together, form a coalition, and take down this usurper. That does not go very smoothly. Meanwhile, this whole time, your character, Lady Cilia, has just been like exploring old ruins, literally underground. You have literally been underneath a rock for several months. And so you come up, and there are Imperial soldiers there, and you're like, oh, hey, what's up? And they're like, come with us. And you're like, sure. And then your friend runs up and like cuts one of their heads off. And you're like, what the fuck? And they're like, you have missed a lot. These are not your friends. Let's kill them and then I'll explain things.
I love a good twist like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far it's been fun. It's, you know, it's very work in progress. There's a lot of stuff to flesh out. There's a lot of mechanical stuff to work out. Originally, I tried playing on easy mode because it has easy, normal, and hard, and I wanted to see the story in time for this podcast. And the scripting breaks pretty heavily on easy mode because easy mode has extra story scripts. And Sniper Serpent was like, yeah, don't play on easy. I'm like, okay, sorry, my bad. But I think there's been pretty good level design, but more than that, it's just like the writing is very... you become aware of, like, we all know how like anime and JRPGs are written typically, right?
Yeah.
But it really gets shoved in your face how differently things can be when you see stuff that's written more like a kind of like Western like fantasy novel. Like I had a conversation. It wasn't a support conversation, but you get conversations sometimes on Fire Emblem when you have recently recruited a character, and you can have a conversation on the battlefield where they're like, "Hey, I just joined," and this, other character's like, "Great, it's great to have you on board." And what are you about? "Oh, I'm an archer." "That's cool. Let's go archery." Whatever, whatever the hell. And I had a prompt for one of those. I was like, "Oh, sure." And so this lady I just recruited as a swordswoman, she got recruited by our cleric. Our cleric is kind of in a tenuous position because she's just some cleric we hired to help us out. Well, not hired, she's just helping us out. But like, we're rebels, and I don't think she knows that. It's possible once she figures that out, she will sell us out because, we're not loyal to the Empire. And so this one-off conversation was this new swordswoman like coming up to one of the major characters and being like, "Hey, I've seen you eyeing the cleric there. If you do anything, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Anyway, bye."
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay. There's a really good like tension between characters that isn't ironed over by everyone just being friends. It's like right now our goals align, but we have different interests, and sometimes we don't fucking like each other. So yeah, I'm just having a good time with it so far. It is very incomplete, but what there is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out once it's done. Like, I don't have a lot of experience with Fire Emblem. I did 3 houses, and then I guess that's all I did. I was getting Triangle Strategy confused with Fire Emblem for a moment, but yeah, I'd be down to play more strategy RPGs in general.
Tactics RPGs, Jen.
Yeah.
Different thing.
Right.
Crucial
yes.
difference. So important. What have you been up to, Jen?
Well, I've been a little too scatterbrained to actually play anything lately, so I ended up turning to a bunch of classic movies instead. Just kind of raiding both my Canopy account and Criterion channel subscription just to find stuff to watch. And as it turns out, I've been leaning towards a lot of historical fiction. Specifically because I really loved Pentiment when it came out, and I ended up finding a video recently that went over different inspirations and things that were just listed in the game's bibliography at the end. So I ended up watching The Return of Martin Guerre. Which is this interesting French film where it's the 1400s. There's a peasant who ends up leaving to, basically, he ends up stealing some rice and sells it so that he can go off to war. 3 years later, he returns and just seems to be a nicer person overall. But people just start realizing, wait a minute, this person who's calling himself Martin Guerre and seems to know everything about us, there's a few discrepancies here. And it's more or less them figuring out over time that this person is an imposter. But also, this person is way nicer than the real Martin Guerre, who was a sack of shit. So there's this interesting question of like, okay, so he's not who he says he was, but like, is that really an excuse to prosecute him? Couldn't we just put him in our community instead of this asshole?
Yeah.
Yeah, I support that. Listen, if you're nice, I don't care who you are.
Yeah. Also, it stars Gerard Depardieu, who, really handsome actor and just very charming. So it was a lot of fun to watch move around. I also ended up watching Andrei Rublev. which is a 1966 Soviet-Russian film about the real-life historical figure Andrei Rublev, and basically gets into how he's a he's a painter that's commissioned by the church for several different paintings, like within the chapels, and he just gets to a point where he doesn't really want to paint what he's being commissioned to paint, and it's this interesting tension of this religious artist figuring himself out and trying to figure out why he's uncomfortable with certain works and what his place in everything is. And it has some really striking scenes. I don't want to spoil a lot because it's honestly a movie where if you go in not knowing much and you just watch it, it can be a very moving experience. But I will say there is a scene where there's this young teenager who decides, okay, these people need a bell. I'm going to make a bell for this lord. And the workers around him make it clear that, okay, you're managing this project. If you fuck up, you know this lord is just going to take your head off, right? And when the bell is finally unveiled, it takes a long time to ring a bell of that size. Like, you have to move the bit in the middle back and forth a bunch of times before it will actually ring.
Yeah.
And just like watching it swing back and forth, waiting to see whether it will actually produce a ringing sound or not for like 3 minutes. It feels like it's taking hours, and it's one of the tensest things I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, this is it's been like a while since I've watched a bunch of Tarkovsky, but I remember this one being pretty good. I feel like he's great at some of those like really long scenes.
Yeah, and the version I watched in particular, which is his preferred version, he actually ended up cutting a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the movies that was kind of initially sanctioned by Soviet Russia for just its general themes, but he ended up making a lot of cuts to it, and he found that the cuts he made it a better movie. So, yeah, it was cool to see a movie where, like, the shortened cut was actually the director's preferred one.
Yeah.
And then I watched something that was incredibly trashy but entertaining at the same time. 1947 movie Lady in the Lake, which is adapting a 1943 Raymond Chandler book. Things about this movie. One, it changes the theme to Christmas just so that they could have a holiday movie, and the way that they illustrate that is the opening credits are shown through greeting cards, and after the directed by is removed, there's just a gun sitting underneath. Two, I did not realize that they invented FMV games in 1947, because most of this movie takes place in first person, where you occasionally see Philip Marlowe through mirrors or things like that, but he's directly addressing you, and it's like, you're going to be solving the mystery with Marlowe, and that means you just are constantly looking at various scenes in first person, and basically all the hallmarks of bad FMV acting are here, like, he'll just say something with this disembodied voice, and characters will arch their eyebrows over his various noir gumshoe quips and things like that. There's just incredibly long shots of him walking through a house, or just looking back and forth from a secretary who's moving out to the person he's actually talking to. there's a bit where he hops in a car and you're just basically watching his hands as he's steering around. And the story is as bog standard noir as you can get, but just this bizarre element of, I'm used to seeing this sort of thing in cheap FMV video games from the 90s, and for some reason all of these filming techniques are here in this old movie. That just kept me captivated throughout.
Yeah, I remember watching this like back probably when I was in high school or something, specifically because of the like it's basically all first person point of view. And it is just like such a gimmick thing. Like I think like the director's career was like ruined by this movie. Because it just like tanked because people are like, what is you mean I don't even see the like main actor most of the time? What the heck? So yeah.
I did find it clever the way that they find ways to hide the camera while still showing him from mirrors, though. Like, they just find the perfect angle so that they show the two actors talking back and forth in certain moments without showing the camera. There's even a bit where he picks up a mirror and holds it to his face as he's getting bandaged up. And I don't know what trick they use for it, compositing or anything like that, but it looks pretty good for a movie that is completely bizarre.
Using your powers for evil.
Yeah. What I'm like, what if some of this was you know how like in some video games they would have a literal mirror world where you'd be also controlling? There might be somewhere it was just a fake mirror. Like
that makes sense to me too.
You just have like a reverse set on the other side. I'm sure there's times where they also use mirror, but like a real mirror and just had the angle. But it is funny thinking about how they also did that same trick in like video games sometimes to give the illusion of a mirrored world.
Yeah, because it turns out mirrors are very hard to make in video games.
Yeah.
I think it's the thing in Metal Gear Solid 2 where every room is slightly transparent because there's a ghost version of it outside, so you can see a reflection.
Yeah, I remember noticing that in the tanker section where you're just looking at the reflective floors, and it's like, oh, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
But yeah, the reason I kind of focused on movies instead of games this time around was most of my game time, or just most of my time thinking about games, was taken up by this month's game, Mystic Messenger.
익숙한 나의 벨소리 무심결에 차가운 손을 뻗어 지난 밤 새롭게 일어난 일은 뭐가 있는지 어쩌면 또 너에 관한 이야기 기분은 어떤지 서로 안무를 주고받을 때 수상한 내 모습 알아채버릴까 말도 되지 않는 공감거리만 늘어놓다가 상상에 바라게 웃고 있는 흘러만가는 시간 속에 전화기 바보처럼 손에 놓질 못해 멈춘 시간 속 떨려오는 지금 전하고픈 글자만 맴돌아 그게 mysterious messages 사진 속 잊을 수 없는 너 액정 속에 비친 나의 모습 너는 의심하지 않아 그 안에 감춰둔 내 마음 천상이
Initially released in 2016 on Android, and I guess the same year on iPhone, just took a few more months to come out. But yeah, it was developed by Chariots, and for quite a while, or at least It had two big bursts of activity, I think. One, right around the time it released in English and other languages. And two, the start of the pandemic, because people realized they could finally play it. But, yeah, at a certain point, this game was very much talked about by a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, for the summary, should I mention what your plans are?
You should just read the summary.
Okay. All right. After installing a strange app on your phone, you receive a chat request from an unknown stranger. The stranger, pretending to be a good Samaritan, guides you into a mysterious apartment to return a valuable item. Once you enter the apartment, the security system locks you in, and you're tossed into a chat room where you meet the members of Rika's Fundraising Association, or RFA. Ever since their founding member Rika passed away, the RFA stopped hosting their popular charity shindigs. Now that you're here and can't leave as you're surrounded by classified information, the team decides that you'll be the new party coordinator. Over the span of 11 real-time days, you must keep up with the RFA's daily lives, win party guests over by answering their emails, and be on the lookout for the stranger that guided you here in the first place. Maybe you'll even find yourself dating one of the members.
Now that's a great summary, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
How much of this game did you play, Jen?
So, I played Zen's route, Yusung's route, and Juman's route.
Okay. Niamh, what about you?
I played Jaehee's route, Zen's route, Seven's route, and then I did the Christmas DLC for Jaehee and Zen, and the Valentine's DLC for Jaehee.
So, I haven't done every route as far as DLC. Main game, I've done every character. I've gotten all their good ends. I have done a lot of the extra DLC, including after endings. I've done all the reading. And I would like to offer you an alternate summary. Feel free to lean back in your chair, maybe grab a drink.
All right.
After the disappearance of her father and the suicide of her mother, 3-year-old Mina finds herself scared and alone in a Korean adoption center. The big sister of the orphanage, Mika, takes Mina under her wing, nurturing the bright and innocent girl while teaching her the ways of the world. However, these lessons are tinged by manipulation as Mika feels jealous of her smart and charming adoptive younger sister. Mika teaches Mina that the world runs on love, but that love is chained by condition and comparison, and while we need love to live, love also can't be trusted. Our adoption center story ends several months later when a devout Christian woman picks Mika to adopt, as the woman sees Mika as being a potential, quote, devout servant to God, and the result of signs she's seen from God that she needs to adopt a child. Mika has a deep distrust of adults and concludes that this woman is going to be a bad parent, but decides it's okay because the woman seems to be crazy enough to love her unconditionally, which Mika sees as the only real virtue in an adult. However, the woman's pastor convinces her to adopt Mina instead. Mina and Mika promise to stay in touch, and Mina is renamed Serena by her adoptive parents after the first saint. Serena's initial joy at being adopted is quickly turned to despair when the woman turns out to be abusive in the extreme, constantly calling her a demon, a curse, and that every act of misbehavior condemns her to hell. Her new father is no help either, a non-Christian who doesn't even want kids and is just going along with the whims of his psychotic wife. The rest of Serena's young life is miserable. She is tortured by her mother, bullied by other children, and sexually abused by her church's pastor. At 16, she is reunited with Mika by chance in a hospital. Both girls are utterly miserable, but neither are able to be fully honest with each other about just how bad things are going. Not long after, Mika disappears and Serena becomes convinced she has died. In her guilt at not finding a way to help Mika, Serena decides she has been too timid and needs to embrace, quote, the devil inside her, to speak up both for herself and in defense of others. She calls out the abusive pastor in the middle of a service and starts threatening her mother with damnation if she raises her hand or voice against her again. Her mother is terrified and obeys. Feeling born again in the power of being selfish, Serena casts that name aside and calls herself Rika. She begins doing charity work, enjoying the feeling of other people needing her help. A few years later, she attends a photo exhibition and spots a photo of the sun that is heartbreakingly beautiful, a vision of perfect, unconditional love. She finds the photographer, a man who goes by the name V, and obsesses over him. She also rescues a young man named Sayung and raises him. Only a couple paragraphs left, folks. Hang in there.
This is a lot to take in.
We've gotten to the stuff that I know now.
Eventually, Rika meets V at one of his exhibitions, and after modeling for him for a few months, begins to date him. V matches his photos. He is the picture of unconditional love, never criticizing and pushing back on anything Rika does, no matter how dark or, frankly, fucked up it is. At some point, Rika finds Mika, her old friend she thought was dead. Mika has lost her vision to cancer and become a joker, just like Rika has, though a slightly different style of one. Mika gets back to her old tricks, convincing Rika that fear is the only path to true love, and that V doesn't really love her. He is just using her to feel better about himself. The fact that this is true is not relevant. Because she dies of cancer, before she dies of cancer, Mika warns Rika not to trust V. All of this boils over when her dog Sally dies, and she accidentally kills Sayung's mother while rescuing his twin brother Seiran. Trust me though, the dog was the bigger problem. To her anyway. This leads to a huge fight with V, where V is like, I don't understand why you're flipping out, and Rika just sort of screams deranged shit for a while. Finally, she attacks V, partially blinding him, and runs away to found a cult called Mint Eye. You know, mint, the color of V's eyes. She kidnaps and persuades people to join her cult, including Seiran, Seyoung's twin, and feeds them a brainwashing drug called Elixir to make them pliable and obedient. Through this, she hopes to one day be mom to the entire world in a big, never-ending party with no pain or suffering. From here, it depends on what route you pick in the game, how things go. In all routes, V chooses not to tell the RFA what Rika has done, instead pretending she committed suicide. In Classic and Deep Story, she orders, she being Rika, orders a brainwashed Seiran to use a random girl to infiltrate the RFA and hold another party, which will lead to Mint Eye taking over RFA somehow. Listen, she's very crazy. This plan doesn't have to make sense. In another story, Seiran recruits a random girl of his own accord by kidnapping her. He has her infiltrate the RFA by telling her it's just a game and that all the members of the RFA are simply AIs. Listen, he's consumed a lot of brainwashing juice. This plan doesn't have to make sense. No matter what route you're on, one thing is clear.
That girl is
That's my summary.
Jesus Christ.
I wish I'd brought more water. My mouth is very dry.
That is a lot darker and more religion focused than I was expecting.
Yeah, you get like, there was a part where I messaged you, Six, being like, this is what I know about like Rika and Mintai, because you get some of this with Seven's route.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know his brother, who's the unknown hacker, you like find out about him and find out some of the backstory about what's going on with Mintai, like Rika's connected. But there's a lot of like me just inferring like Rika seems to be brainwashing people to like make them be happy or something, you know, this like warped idea of happiness. But yeah, the whole like backstory, I was like, I don't know that part, but I still kind of just know what like Rika's general deal is, which is you know, being extremely extra and poison. So
Yeah. Around the time, I think it was Juman's route, there was a flashback where Rika was just talking about how she just really wanted to make a world where everyone was happy, and my brain immediately went, oh, that's cult shit. She's the one. She's involved with Midtai.
Yeah. It really... The Another Story route is really unhinged, both for Seiren / Rei, and for V. I'll double back and we can kind of talk about the basics in a minute, but since we've got this momentum here, the V route is basically this couple having, like, these two exes having the same fight over and over for 7 days. The fight basically being V's part in this relationship is being like, well, this is what love is you just, whenever the person you love does anything, you say, good job, I love you, even if it's like shot at orphan, right? And then Rika's version is, you won't offer me constructive feedback, so I'm going to burn down, a hospital. And it's like, you're both just fucking lunatics and I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, it sounds like both of them have similar ideas about love, which makes them completely incompatible, because the moment that kind of like distance from reality just bumps up against each other, like things just go to hell.
Well, Rika will say that she thinks love should be unconditional. The way she manifests that is by drugging people and beating them. So, little different from V.
True.
Yeah, like the last couple days, I occasionally will check out TikTok because my wife sends me TikToks constantly. And so now sometimes I'll like scroll through, and there's this one person that I keep getting where it's just this girl who's like walking, and she'll be like, you should ask like your boyfriend, like, if you are the hot one or the funny one in the relationship, and if he doesn't say both, start a fight, and like everything ends with like start a fight with him. And I'm just like, this seems like Rika's vibe. It's like, if he's just not like fully prioritizing you in all ways, start a fight. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of people that I've seen act like that on social media and other places, and it's frankly a terrifying view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like V is worse because V thinks he's the good guy. I think, like, by the numbers, Rika is definitely worse. But
she's the anime supervillain.
Right, but like V is the person who, through all of these events, like, is sitting there in the RFA being like, well, I guess I need to tell them that Rika committed suicide because I'm sure we could work this out. It's like, V!
Not just that, he doesn't even take care of himself. Like, because he had his eyes hurt by Rika, he decides that, oh, I don't deserve to have eyesight. I should just let this go, even though like, everyone around him is rich as fuck and could easily just, like, go, okay, we're gonna book you for surgery. We're gonna get this taken care of. Instead, he just wears sunglasses.
Your whole job is being a photographer.
Yeah.
Do you know about that thing? This is another example of what a little shit V is. V wanted to do art when he was a kid, but he was too scared. And Juman was like, you should do painting. And V is like, if I create something myself, then people can criticize it. I can't do that. And Juman's like, okay, how about you take a couple of pictures for like a month, and then you use that as a gateway to get into painting. And V's like, great, I will never move on from the camera.
Yeah, there's something too where I think it's like in Zen's route or something, where it like talks about how you just have to like completely empty yourself out because like there shouldn't be any of the artist at all in the work. And I was like, is that good advice? Yeah, Zen's just like, oh, so you mean I should do method acting? I'm like, I don't think that's what V's talking about.
I think Zen's route might also have the darkest ending for V. Unless other things happen to him in other routes, because, like...
Sorry, please continue.
He basically ends that one being like, hey, everyone, I'm gonna be coming to the party tomorrow, looking forward to it, and then he just jumps off a building.
Depending on how it goes, I think this is the normal ending. So the good ending, I think it goes a little better with Ray's. But the normal ending of Ray's is that he, like, goes to Rika and hands her a gun and is like, do what you gotta do. I mean, this man sucks so bad. This is a legendarily shitty dude.
It's so funny when you, like, first start playing the game, too, and it's like, we should trust V, and you're like, yeah, I guess we should. And then the more you play of it, you're like, no! Why?
What are we talking about
you
right
fool.
now?
Oh.
I'm not used to like jumping to the end this quickly, so I'm not entirely sure.
Well, okay, so the members of RFA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already established pretty well Rika and V, I think. There's 707, aka Se Young, aka Luciel. He's a wacky hacker who's 2 online.
Mm-hmm.
There's Juman Han, who is a vice president of a major company and son of the CEO. Oh, sorry, of the president. I guess it's different. I don't know corporate structure. Fuck off. There is Jae-hee Kang, who is the assistant to Juman, a very capable lady who is in a shitty job that works her too hard, but at least she gets paid well, I guess. There is Zen, who is an actor of stage and a handsome narcissist. There is Yoo-sung Kim, who is Rika's cousin and a college student who... Listen, if you work at it, you can untangle him. He's fucked up, but pretty surface level fucked up.
Yeah. Basically, he really took to his cousin Rika after meeting her, and after she died, he basically dyed his hair blonde, and as soon as the first woman he sees enters his life, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna find all the similarities I can find with Rika, and maybe I can just replace Rika with her and just treat her like Rika."
We'll have to talk about how much of this is Rika's fault in a minute, but and the last character is Seiran, aka Ray, aka Unknown. This is the hacker from Rika's cult that gets you into the game in the first place. If you do another story, you meet them. This is 707's twin, who was kidnapped by Rika and fed brainwashing juice until his hair color changed, and he has split personalities. A lot going on with him.
Yeah.
The last day not the last day, because day 11 is always just one last chat room and then the party. But day 10 with him is you logging into the chat room. Then they're like, how's it going? And you're like, we are on the run. There are people with guns. So that one goes pretty hard. Okay. Do you want to talk Zen first? I feel like Zen's the easiest.
Yeah. So Zen's whole deal, as you mentioned, is a narcissist, but like the story takes an interesting angle with him where canonically he was just born so beautiful that everyone just wants to continuously make him their friend and go up to him, get his autograph, all that sort of stuff. Like, that's just how he is IRL. And because of this, his parents attempted to, like... his parents basically called him ugly all the time and made him think that he wasn't anything... He didn't stand out. It wasn't until he talked with his brother, and his brother was like, yeah, dude, you're super handsome. People just want to be around you. That he just started to lean into that somewhat. And unfortunately, he got betrayed by his brother somewhat, because as Zen was trying to focus on other things, at this time going as Hyun-ryu, his parents wanted to go to medical school or get a normal job, and his brother's like, yeah, why don't you just be normal like me? Don't chase celebrities or anything like that. Zen becomes so discouraged that he runs away, changes his name to Zen, and more or less just lives on his own for a long time until he meets V and Rika, and they more or less set him up with support of sorts. Though he in particular takes an interesting tack to that. Like, he does not want monetary support at all. Like, there's multiple times where Juman has told him, look, I'll send you to acting school in where was it? I think London. Yeah, in acting school in London. I'll take care of all your bills. I'll help propel you. And Zen's like, no, I want to do this by my own grit. Like, pull myself up by my bootstraps. And, yeah, he's pretty...
He also just sort of like cats and dogs hates Juman, right? Like, instinctively will reject anything Juman suggests, so...
Yes, he is so allergic to cats that even pictures of cats make him break out in a rash.
That's not how that works.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, there's a lot of weird about him because he has
Yeah.
superpowers.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
literally has superpowers.
He's got the Wolverine mutation. You know?
He's also got, fucking foresight. He has prophetic dreams.
Yeah, that too. He's a little bit of like the mystical albino.
Yeah, because he is an anime albino.
Yeah, he's got the red eyes, the white hair.
Also, except for in another story, every other route. No, I guess it's just common story. Whatever. That right before the branch, he wakes up and is like, "Hey, I just took a nap and had a dream that we're in a video game, and you're the player character." And you're like, "Haha, that's weird."
Yeah, one of the options that they give you is, actually, I'm just choosing dialogue this app brings up for me. But yeah, like his specific story thrust is that there's a girl who goes by the name Echo Girl, I believe, decides to insert herself in Zen's life just because she's had a crush on him forever and just wants to be like the only thing within Zen's periphery and stuff. At one point, she comes over to his house and just tries to come in and forces herself on him somewhat. He refuses all her advances. She storms out. And then she starts rumors about him sexually harassing her, which sends his career into something of a tumble. And I don't know, considering around the time this game came out, or like the stuff that happened a year after this game came out with Me Too and everything else, this story is a bit much.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of evil women in this game, right? I mean, of course, there's Rika, right? Jumin's root has, like, Sarah and Glam, a pair of sisters who are, like, gold diggers and manipulative evil ladies, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's mostly it.
I mean,
guess
Seven's mom.
Seven's mom, that's true.
Yeah.
Also, fucking Mika, right? As we learned from my summary, right? Who's in the Rika like before story, where you just see like baby Rika named Mina in an orphanage as Mika is there being like, if they love you, it's because they're evil. Like, what are we doing right now?
Yeah, I think the reason why Echo Girls in particular really sticks out is everyone else is just working on a level of cartoonish evil that is unrealistic to the extreme. Like the thing with the sisters that are chasing Jumin, one of them has plastic surgery so she can start going as... She has plastic surgery so she can pass herself off as her sister's protege. And basically, both of them will marry into the family using their own methods. And, like, that doesn't happen in real life. But just the way that Echo Girl's story mimics, like, some of the ways that people, like... The thing that Echo Girl talks about being sexually harassed by an actor who takes advantage of her, like, that's a real thing. That just happens.
Sure.
Yeah. And then there's all sorts of shitty people who are like, oh, they're just lying for attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which in this case she is, but most of the time that is not the case. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The route basically ends with her story being debunked because around the time that they met first, there happened to be a seller of fish-shaped bread right outside of Zen's house. And I don't know many food carts that go outside of people's, like, suburban houses, but okay. But essentially he's like, yeah, Echo Girl met him and she was just really into him. And somehow that makes everything go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the dramatic press conference where like, there's the whole speech, and then he's like, also part of the proof is Zen being like, and here's my girlfriend, as if that would somehow be a proof of anything.
Yeah, like, I couldn't be shitty to a woman, I have a girlfriend.
Yep. God. Yeah, like, considering everything else around it, it's easy to, like, put it aside and be like, yeah, it's just another story in this game, but just the timing of it and how real it is compared to everything else kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, at least until, like, I got to the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, like, the like time-wise, the adjacency to, like, Me Too and stuff is honestly pretty much just coincidental, because South Korea was not on the Me Too train. That is not culturally, there is a lot of misogyny there, and I don't think that I think that is mostly coincidental. I don't think that makes it good, right? But it is, at least it wasn't of the moment. It's just general shitty about women.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next up we have the yandere, Yusung.
I actually messaged Six about this around the time I was in the middle of his art, like, Yusung doesn't really strike me as a yandere, but the more you learn about him, the more you realize, yeah, he's overprotective to the point of just going across the line to a certain degree. His whole thing is he's in college, he is obsessed with LOLOL, which basically stands in for League of Legends.
Of Legends.
Of loneliness, I believe, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You'll find.
Yeah. He plays it all the time to the point where he has dark circles under his eyes, he misses classes. At some point, he had an idea of what he wanted to be, like, in a career, but essentially after Rika died, all of that faded away, and he just threw himself into the game. So, of course, the one person who appears that breaks him out of this cycle, he immediately takes it to mean, oh, this is just Rika again. I could just totally treat her like Rika. And depending on how you treat him, I believe he can get to a point where he just gets into this full identity crisis and goes out of his way to make sure that you do resemble Rika in every way possible.
Well, he could get you killed is what happens.
Oh.
So this is another one of those signs. If you get this bad ending, it's a moment, because you're on the casual story, and so you don't know that much about what's up with Rika and her whole thing. But 7 and V keep being like, no one go to the apartment. Please, no one go to the apartment. And if you don't successfully discourage Yusung's obsessive tendencies, he will sneak into 7's house, get the address, come to see you, step inside, be like, you don't look like Rika at all, and then the automated bombs go off and you die.
Yeah, were you aware, Jen, that there's automated bombs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure which all ones that comes up in.
I think that comes up in Zen's as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think it does come up in Zen. I know 7's is like a whole thing, because he's able to go deactivate it. So
there's actually the League of Legends thing is actually in another story which takes place like 3 or 6 months, I forget which, like before the other stories would. Yusung is it's like been a week or something since the funeral. And Yusung is just like, every time he sees V, he's like, what the fuck are you hiding? Where is Rika? There was no body. What the fuck are you talking about? This is all fake. I don't trust you. Which, like, I mean, he's right. And finally, 7 gets exasperated and remote installs League of Legends on his computer. And Yusung's like, I've been reborn. I am a game addict now.
Oh.
I've never pursued Yusung's route for 2 reasons. Because even when this game came out, I was like 28. I'm like, you're still in school. You're too young. But there's also just like some of these characters, I was thinking about characters in Nana because I just think about Nana constantly. And he's got like this Nobu thing around women and like purity of women and stuff where I'm just like, I can't be the person that teaches you about this. So, he's always been the character that I have like the absolute least interest in.
I find his route is actually, once you get past his psychosis, which doesn't take that long, he's actually like a huge sweetheart. It's one of the most romantic routes. He loses an eye for you.
Yeah, I'm seeing this like image of him, you know, there's like the kiss one. I'm like, this is a pretty romantic one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he, I believe that's one of the routes where he and Seven storm the Mintai headquarters, and essentially Yusung gets captured, and Rei's like, I wonder what I can do to prevent you from ever practicing medicine. I know, I'll gouge your eye out. And, or he does something to the eye. And, yeah. He ends up losing his eye, but if you watch his after story, he found a way to be a vet after all. The after story stuff is actually the bit where I liked Yusung the most, because he's just fully a vet now. He's on the top of his game. He graduated super early, and I don't know, he just seems to have his life in order in a way that's like, damn, I wish I had my life as in order as he does.
Yeah. No, I think his after story his after ending is pretty good. Some of them are weaker. Zen's is just, you know, a day with your boyfriend, basically, right?
Yeah.
Jaehi is the one that is the most. Okay, so Jaehi's route is it's just like her breaking your heart over and over, right?
It also just feels like there's not quite enough plot compared to some of the other, like, Sevens has so much plot. I'm
Sevens
like, you needed more days here.
Yeah, I think that's not uncommon. I think Juman's had, like, there are a lot of them where it's like the route did not have enough material. You had to stretch it. Jaehi's is just that, like, her job sucks and it gets worse than she's losing her mind, and finally you get her to work up the courage to quit.
Yeah. Also, you find out that she wears fake glasses and keeps her hair short because that is one of Juman's policies.
Well, this is a whole thing. If you want to do this now, Juman is right on this one, because his dad is such a fucking creep that if there is a woman he meets who he finds remotely attractive, he will do whatever it takes to fuck her. That's how Juman has lost every secretary he's had so far.
Jesus.
And he's like, my dad doesn't like short hair. My dad doesn't like glasses. Protect yourself. Creepy. Sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew about Juman's dad just doing the route, but I didn't know that that was the reason why he had Jaehi cut her hair and wear glasses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that route is a lot of, like, everyone being like, man, Jaehi just really needs someone to be there for her. I think she really wants to fall in love, but it'd be better if she just had a friend. And you're like screaming and lesbian, like, no.
Yeah. I think you mentioned something about, like, further stories as DLC for her, kind of pushing more and more into the idea that, like, okay, she can get a relationship out of this after all.
Yeah, I mean, so there's her after ending, which is like you two together at the cafe you've started together, and it's kind of sweet. And then after that is the Christmas DLC, which ends with she has passed out on her desk and the MC like kisses her, and sort of the implication of the scene is like, no, the MC is gay, and maybe Jaehi will get there eventually. And then finally
there's a line of like, I'll work up my courage to tell you someday or something.
Mm-hmm. And then finally the Valentine's Day one is like her blushing as you feed her cake, and it's like, I think she's starting to figure it out.
Yeah, there's like a part where you are because you've just been like working so hard on the cafe for a while, and you accidentally get locked in like the storage closet, and like Yusung has become the new assistant for Juman, which is funny. But then you're like, Yusung came by to visit, so you're like, come back, we're locked in the storage closet. And then you like sit and just talk for a while. And then it's just the most of her being like, wait a minute. Like, I think I'm straight, but also I just realized that I have like a person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and that's you. So now I gotta think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it ends with the whole like happy Valentine's Day. So, there's a way where like, for me, because I'm Demi, which just means I've never had a relationship where I wasn't friends with somebody for a year beforehand. So especially like Zen's route, because Zen is so quick to just like be into you, and like you're basically dating like as soon as you start Zen's route. It's like not official, but like you're like fully flirting in the group chat. It's wild. I'm like, this is too fast. Like Jaehee's like, y'all are moving too fast. I'm like, I kind of agree with you. The Zen's route is wild.
Yeah.
So there's a way where I'm like, the Jaehee route, I'm like, this also just does feel real to me, of like, you just talk for a while, you're like, you know, really good friends, and then it's like, later on, you've been together for like months, and you're like, I think something's here. But, yeah. It is still, I still understand why people are disappointed, because all the other ones end with like a you know, kiss splash card, and you do not get that with Jaehee, so.
Well, and like, it's so expressly, like, it's like cartoonish, right? Like, it's like the grandma, they're such good friends meme.
Yeah.
As she's like, I want you to spend the rest of my life, your life with me, as my friend and nothing else. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. Jesus.
I have a proposal for you. I want you to be my partner. Here is a ring to signify that we will be together working on a bakery. You're like, okay, okay.
Engraved in the inside of the ring is no homo.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing is, like, I don't know, it's an otome game. You're there for kind of a quick romance. I think sort of in Zen's defense, there's a fan theory for Zen that I like. I don't know how much I buy into, but I do, like, I don't know, there's kind of something to it. Zen does have dreams of the future, right? I totally buy the idea that he's like had dreams of where you and him go, and been like, oh man, actually this could totally work out.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
He doesn't play by the rules of chronology as much as some folks.
Yeah.
I guess if we're talking about moving too fast, we should also discuss Jubin, because essentially, as he's fighting off the advances of this sister and well, basically the two sisters, as they try and get him to marry the other sister, he basically starts finding comfort in just talking with you, and at one point, you're invited over to just comfort him in general, and when he lets his beloved cat, Elizabeth III, out to eat, because during this time, he's become so afraid that the sisters are going to steal his cat that he's developed a comically large cage and put Elizabeth in it, as Elizabeth just does sad meows, like, meow. And as soon as Jumin lets her out to eat, Elizabeth III just fucking bolts out of there immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really mention how Elizabeth III gets into Mint Eye, but it becomes a situation where your stay with Jubin becomes elongated, because he just needs someone to look after him now that he doesn't have his cat nearby. And also, he starts having a crisis like, well, this is a fucking cat. I don't know what it's thinking. It might even hate me. Maybe I should just go talk to this woman instead.
And he gets very possessive of you, which, like, to be clear, is inappropriate, but also you have cracked 25 years, do we want to guess, of him pretending he doesn't have emotions? He's got a lot that's hitting him all at once.
Yeah. And also during this time, just casually chatting, as your stay gets longer and longer, he'll just occasionally send something to the group chat like, I almost want to put her in a cage or something, haha, just joking though.
But you also get those choices. One of the problems with this game is that, like, once you've picked, until you've picked your route, a lot of your choices are like, who are you going to be nicer to end up with more affection, to end up on their route, right?
Yeah.
But, like, once you're on their route, it's just like the choices are just like, do you want a bad end, right? Like, this is not hyperbole. This is literally one of the choices where this is in the route where you are, like, in Jumin's route, and Jumin's gone to work, and you're talking to Zen, and he's being really psychotic about you and his cat, right? And you're like, yeah, he's got this big cage here, and Zen's like, that's fucked up. And you have a dialogue choice to literally be like, I kind of want to crawl into it. It's just like things you wouldn't say unless you want things to go bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zen turns into the voice of reason during this route somehow. Like, he's still doing his whole pretty boy, everyone, I'm a danger to society because if I walk out, people just faint, and isn't that cool? But as your stay gets longer and longer, he's like, what the fuck is up with this? You need to leave his apartment. This is moving too fast, and also he's acting weird. You should not be there.
Now that I'm learning more details about Jumin's route, which me never doing his route is just like, in my head is like, he's ace. Just because there's so many stuff that comes up about him, like, being gay. There's, like, this rumor that circulates in a number of the other routes. And he always just, like, denies it, but doesn't say anything. And, like, just very clearly, like, doesn't seem that interested in women. I was like, he could just be ace. But now that I know more about his route, so I noticed that there's a bad Jumin, like, extension thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
if you do the BDSM, do you get, like, a BDSM extra DLC?
Eventually you do. So it took a long time. This is one of the last pieces of content they added to the game. This is bad ending number 2 for Jumin, where you're just his pet, and he's like, this is good, I like this. And so Chariots, these precious, like, cishet boys are like, man, can you imagine if people tied each other up? That'd be so fucked up and evil. And for like a couple of years, all the fans were just being like, no, actually, that can be a healthy relationship. And finally they were like, fine. It's very funny.
I also love how, as the two of you just are constantly chatting, even when you're just next to each other in bed or whatever, at one point while the other members is like, you're kind of just talking like a married couple now, huh? And Jumin takes that as a go-ahead to, like, change his profile picture to 2 wedding rings, just starts talking about how, I finally understand the beauty of marriage. And you basically, in order to get the best ending, you do have to tell him, look, I need to go home at some point, and this is going way too fucking fast, but I do like you.
And then he evens out and just changes his profile picture to you on the group chat.
Yep. It's really something.
Yeah. And that's it for casual. Well, I guess that's the first one of Deep Story. The other one, of course, is 707. Who, can I say, 707? Your root aside, you don't need a girlfriend. You need a friend.
Yeah. It's also bizarre because, like, in the casual route where they're playing, I'm like, 7's kind of cute. I kind of like 7. I do the, like, Deep Story where I'm, like, trying to actually do the 7 route, and I'm like, why the fuck are you so annoying? Why is it the one where I'm going to date you that you are annoying?
But good news, it doesn't matter that he's annoying, because unless you try for Jumin, you're going to end up with 7, because even in game mechanics, 7 is so desperate for attention that 7 will say something like, just be like, LOL bacon, and your options are like, haha, or like, why the fuck did you say that? And either way, he likes it, because he said hi to him.
Yeah.
He's so lonely.
He also, like, has some interesting things going on with sexuality in general. Like, there's
This is The biggest letdown, though. I'll let you finish, but
There's just multiple moments where he'll just post photos of him like in a sundress or as a nun, or like the one that's really something is that he creates this whole character of Mary Vanderwood III, and it's kind of implied that whenever his room becomes too stinky and gamer moded, he just dresses up like a maid and takes care of the cleaning that way.
Jen doesn't know.
there's an actual other secret agent called Vanderwood who comes and cleans his place so he can keep working because he's a better hacker.
Because he's such a good hacker that the agency is like, go do whatever Seven tells you. He's like, I can't fucking believe this. Vanderwood is a real guy.
The biggest disappointment in it is you get to his route and then he just stops cross-dressing. I'm like, what the fuck? I signed up for something, you know?
Damn.
And then immediately he goes from annoying, like they're trying to have him be too online, but also maybe too online is just different in Korea, or maybe like...
I think these people are just too offline.
Yeah.
This is the most offline person you've ever met writing the most online person.
Yes, that's definitely the vibe. But then it like immediately swings into just like, oh, this is like getting into the whole tragedy stuff. Like very quickly it moves into, oh, actually this whole being like goofy is a front because I don't think that anybody should ever get to know the real me, because like here's my whole tragic backstory, blah blah blah, that you like uncover throughout the route. And there's so many different like twists and turns. Like you spend a lot of the route just together, which is just then funny because it's like they're manufacturing that he has to keep like hacking, so he's working and you're just like sitting in the apartment while he's working and like not talking, except that he'll sometimes log on and then you'll talk to him in the chat room, which is just bizarre. But yeah, there's like car chase and stuff. It's wild.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another story, right? You have been kidnapped to Mint Eye under the pretense of testing an otome game. And there's a bunch of... So the first 4 days until you get the route branch is like you have to keep pretending like as a player you have to maintain your character being an idiot and being like, these AIs are really realistic for 4 days, until on the 4th day V shows up in person in disguise and is like, are you fucking okay? I don't think they're feeding you. And that's where you get the branches into either V or Ray's route. V's route is him trying to like resolve things with Rika and Mint Eye, and eventually you get to talk a lot more to Rika. Eventually you get Rika in like talking to like RFA just like in the chat room, and this is where like that route is miserable because, as I say, it's just this two assholes who were a shitty couple having the same fight over and over in public. And occasionally Yusung will show up and be like, wow, LOL, you three should get together. Which is a bad end. It's a very bad end. Don't do it. But you do get some great stuff realizing what an asshole Rika is. I'm gonna post a few screenshots that I will describe for the listener. First of all, there's a conversation you get to have with Rika, which is sort of like, what were her plans, right, for all the members of RFA? Because of course she doesn't just want to have a relationship with someone. She wants to steer them towards a particular route in life. So she's trying to make Lucille have a normal girlfriend. He's trying to make Zen feel like RFA is his family. All this stuff. This is also one of the times where you get true MVP Jaehee shit. Because she tries this shit with Jaehee, and Jaehee is not here for it. She's like, oh, but Jaehee, like, yes, of course I faked my own death and I'm leading a cult, but like, we're friends, aren't we? I mean, listen, if you're in this chat room and you're not my friend, I feel like you should leave because we're friends, right? And Jaehee instantly logs It's like Jae, and you get some flashbacks where Jae like is interacting with Rika back in the day, and knowing what you know about both of these characters, you could see that Jaehe's like, everyone around me likes this person, so I'm going to be polite. This woman is such an asshole. So that's terrific. In the end, if you get the good ending with V, he is like, he ends things with Rika properly and is like, I'm going to journey around the world and find myself. And in the end, he comes back and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and like a puka necklace, and he's like, I'm going to become a painter.
Did he fix his eyesight in that route?
Yes, he does.
Okay.
And then there is Ray's route. So you've been dealing with the hacker, aka Unknown. His name is Ray. He's a nice soft boy who always is afraid he's fucking things up, and he loves flowers. And he keeps sort of not knowing what to do with you because he thinks you're really beautiful and you're so kind, and he needs to look after you. But his savior, Rika, is like, can you just be a sicko already? Jesus Christ. And you get this really good screenshot of like the force feeding milk meme, but with brainwash juice. Where she's just holding his mouth open and water falling brainwash juice into his mouth. She does this numerous times, and eventually you get to meet Seiren, who is the alternate personality, and he's a sicko, and he starves you and hits you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not super great. I was really worried I was going to fail out of the route because he kept, you get dialogue choices where he's like, well, you go ahead and beg for your life. And you get options to be like, would that make you feel better? And I'm like, he's going to kill me one of these times. No, apparently those were the right choices. Go figure. And eventually you convince him, you get him to like sort of synthesize the two personalities, and you go on the run. In this route also, does the stuff with Seven and Ray's dad come up much in 707's route? I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, that like he's hiding from his dad, and that his dad is like some rich and powerful person.
His dad's the prime minister of Korea.
Okay, yeah, that part doesn't come up, but
and so he starts like he has Zen brought in for questioning by the prosecutor's office. He's like doing all this shit. He's like trying to get at RFA to find, Seven and Ray. Eventually he kidnaps Seven, and the way you resolve this is Ray is good now. Seiren. I should start saying Seiren, because eventually he's like, no, I can embrace my old name. It's fine. It used to just cause me pain, but I'm okay now. And he's like, all right, I'll work with RFA. We will find where Seven is. And we figured out that there's kind of only one way to fix this, which is that V secretly for years has been building a dirt sheet on the prime minister, which is like 700 felonies long. And we're just, okay, I will hack every news site in Korea and turn it into a Twitch stream of Seven reading out a list of crimes.
Damn. Imagine a world where a politician doing a bunch of evil shit and committing crimes actually caused
consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now listen, we're here for fantasy, right? That's the power of love. Yeah. And I don't. Of note are some of the bad ends. There are two interesting bad ends with Ray. Both of them around Rika, right? One is where you're like, Rika's like, you know what? Actually, screw all this. You're cute. Be my new like abuse like other side of my abusive relationship girlfriend. And that's a whole thing, right? And then the other one is her being like, listen, you wanna treat Ray like a puppet. I want to treat Ray like a puppet. Why don't we just do it together? And so yeah, the ending picture is like a clearly depressed, empty looking Ray with two power suited girlfriends behind him.
I don't. Every time it shows like your character, of course they're doing the thing some other tomes do, where your face is basically only a nose and a mouth, so that you can kind of project yourself onto them. Whenever you're seeing photos like this, and like even the one where you're feeding Jaehee cake, something about the smirk always gives off a devilish impression.
I mean, this is an ending where you've decided to make Ray your toy, so I think it's kind of devilish.
Yeah.
But you are right.
Yeah.
You do have a real smirk going
on. There's one other route, which is the April Fool's route. Did anybody else play this one?
I did years ago. I barely remember it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it is April Fool's, which also is Zen's birthday. And so he wakes up and he's like, I hate that nobody just celebrates my birthday. Everybody wants to pull pranks on me. And immediately Seven's like, hey, I just sent 5 tons of cardboard to your house and you're going to have to pay for it when it arrives. And also it's 5 tons of cardboard. And you're like, oh, okay. This is the normal prank thing. As it goes on, you learn that, I'll just send. So here's Zen throughout it. That's a normal Zen. So he has a little birthday cake. But then the rest of the people, so we learn that 707 is made out of cardboard. Yusung is an omelet, and at one point, Zen goes to see Yusung and just finds an omelet, and the ketchup on the omelet moves as he's talking. Which seems to confirm this is really happening. Jumin, which you do see early on and has this cat picture as the profile, that is Jumin. Jumin is the cat. Elizabeth III is his human owner.
That's
and then Jaehee is an electric kettle with a short cable that Jumin keeps tripping over and unplugging her, and then she needs to be plugged in so she can continue to work. She also continually makes jokes about she'll apologize when she gets a little heated. This part where she gets mad in the chat. All sorts of things like that. Just full dry humor about being a kettle. There's also just wild stuff that comes up throughout this. 707 is on a secret mission to try to get Jumin to use him as a scratcher. And includes dialogue where Seven says, if it's Jumin, I could give him my whole body. I wish he'd go hysteric one day and leave a sharp wound on my chest. To which I was able to respond, I respect your taste, Seven. And then there's a part where he doesn't have fingers because he's a cardboard, so he wants somebody to cut his fingers. And so you can offer to bring scissors to cut his fingers, which also gets weirdly kinky as an offer to make to him. And then there's also a part where he's specifically asking Jumin to give him an intense back rub, and then you can say, just wait till you see what my nails can do. Also, Jumin is very obsessed about specific types of cardboard with the correct geometry, and there's this special box that he's having made by this factory of the specific cardboard that he likes. It's perfectly manufactured so that the stripes on it all look perfect, nothing's asymmetrical. So he can go sit in a box because he's a cat. Yeah, it just, and then at the end of it is, at least the ending that I got, you convince Zen that he's just entered into another universe where this is, everybody is something else. You're the one who's weird here, Zen. We are all weird here. And so Zen wills himself into becoming a plaster bust, And so he's just like a white plaster bust. Of, you know, just like the like head, with like hair and everything. And so then he signs in and he's all proud that he's like finally like become like everybody else. And then it's just back to normal and everyone's like, I thought you hated April Fools because it's your birthday. Why are you trying to play a prank on us? So, it was delightful. It was honestly some of the best character writing. I just highly encourage people to play it because it's just these characters being goofy, in a way that sometimes the main game could have had more of, honestly.
I am seeing on the wiki that there are other ways this can go, that are just okay. So first of all, here is like Thug You Song.
Oh.
What?
Here is B-Boy Juman. And here is sweet little, just like, you know, preschooler Jay with her childish drawing of money falling from the sky with the text "I love money."
God.
Well, how do you get here?
I have no idea.
Is this because I really leaned into the cardboard prank? Did
I'm
I get
guessing?
the cardboard thing because I leaned
I'm
into
guessing?
cardboard prank?
I don't know. I'm guessing so. I do have to find out because this is great.
Yeah, this would not justify another playthrough for me so soon, but
It's just one day.
Yeah.
You can do this, Jen. It's okay. It's zero. It's no content you've done before,
Yeah.
and you're still unemployed.
yeah. Well, I'm technically employed, but my clearance has to come through before I can start the job.
Fair.
But yeah. I do not know how I would have done this if I was getting into a new job around the time this game came out, because disruptive is putting this game mildly. Essentially every few hours, and occasionally just every hour, you'll be thrown into a new chat room, and you have to answer that chat, and you don't have to answer all of them, but you have to answer a certain percentage for each route, and if you fall below that percentage, you'll get into a bad end. So
I believe it's 50 for casual, 60 for deep, and then 75 for another story.
jeez.
But that's also misleading because, like, for example, in Ray's route, after day 7, you will not get any emails. You will not get any people, any new guests for the party. So you have to get the right chat rooms to get every single guest, or you will fail.
Oh.
So for Ray's, most days I got anywhere between 85 and 100%. Ray's route, I got 100% every day. That did not feel good on my human body.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you give this game your time zone, and when I first did that, I was thinking, okay, it's doing that so it will send me messages at reasonable times of the day. No, it'll send messages right near midnight. It'll send messages at 1 a.m. Throughout the whole day, you're just getting these messages, and even if you're not answering all of them, it just does this disruptive thing to your mentality where I went through a lot of shit in November, like from going to specific serious events to other situations, and this game more or less had to be trained where anytime I was out of that event, I was checking the chat room, and anytime while I was still in the event, I just kept thinking about, am I missing a chat right now? And since we did 3 routes for this, and we had to start pretty much almost immediately after we decided on it, I was basically within this mindset for 33 days.
Yep.
33 days straight. And I I'm really glad I got to see this finally, because Six has been talking about it forever. And at one point, like, I know this game's pretty important to you overall, just because you really like the characters and all that, but if this had come in any other point in my life, it probably would have gotten me into serious trouble. And as is, like, I was completely scatterbrained throughout the entire month. Like, there were certain bits of writing where I was trying to think up something, but then I would get the text and all that just kind of went away. Yeah, I think that it's a cool thing if you happen to have, like, the time to spare for it, but only play a route at a time and don't do it in a row, because if you do it in a row, it compounds and causes trouble.
Yeah, I definitely, like, because the times that I played it before, I would just do, like, a route, and then I would come back to it, like, months later. I definitely felt it more, where it was just, like, a full month of this. I've also often played it where it's like, oh, I'm going to be kind of, like, not, like, on vacation where I'm, like, truly out doing things. I don't want to have to be checking Mystic Messenger then, but, you know, you have, like, those times where you're like, I'm going to have, like, some days off from work, like, I'm chilling a little bit right now. So those are the times that I played it before. Thankfully, to some degree. One, I truly just missed some night chats, and the ones that I did where I'd be like, oh, I'm on Jaehee's route, and I saw that Jaehe was, like, up late. You can, like, pay the, 10 hourglasses? So I had some built up. Yeah, it does.
Sadly.
There was one day where I had a big work meeting, and I was just like, I want to not have to do any of this. Like, I'm like, one day, like, that'll be the day 11, and I just don't even want to have to deal with day 11. I did day 11 because it was, you know, you have 2 chats. It's very easy. Mm-hmm. But so I did do the, like, 50 hourglasses it was for that route, where you, like, get an entire day ahead of time. Yeah, the other thing that, like, I take multiple medications that are diuretics, so it's just like, I'm going to the bathroom, all right, like, I have, like, that max speed, like, $3 or whatever, it's, like, the biggest, if you're gonna spend any money on the game, like, just being able to have, like, give me all of it so I can quickly read it. Skim, okay. Like, there are definitely some chats where I was just, like, skimming past, where I was like, all right, I kind of got what's going on here. These aren't, like, the characters that I really want to talk to right now anyway. But I'm just getting the like, chat stuff, and then I'd, like, figure out the answer, or however I wanted to answer. So yeah, that definitely got me through, but there's a way that, like, I enjoy this, like, I enjoy when, like, content is missable in games. I think it, like, adds to an interesting experience for everyone. Like, it becomes harder to, like, get that 100%, and so everybody ends up having sort of their own version of it. But there's ways that the game is, like, very punishing around that, and I wish it was, like, a little less punishing and also more flexible. Like, you could, like, put in a schedule, and also maybe more of it was, like, around just texting back and forth, where it could be a little bit more asynchronous rather than, like, a chat room where everyone's talking constantly. So there's ways that I, like, love the idea of this, but I think there's, like, an execution of it that is, that could be done that would be not nearly as, like, you gotta check in, do the chat room, like, you gotta be present the whole time. 'Cause, yeah, if there's just something where it was, like, easier to put in, here's when I'm not, like, you know, or, like, do the quick response where, like, somebody's going to text you and maybe you'll have, like, a full convo that you get later, but you can be like, oh, sorry, I'm busy. And you could, like, set the time that you might be available or whatever. There are, like, definitely ways that you can make this less, like, intrusive, and still have, like, missable content, or, like, oh, I forgot to, like, text that person back for hours and now they're kind of annoyed with me. I think that stuff could be interesting, but, yeah, the balance sometimes is, like, there are definitely times where, like, I woke up, I occasionally get foot cramps at night, so there's once where I woke up and I was like, well, if I'm walking around with a foot cramp anyway so I can go back to sleep, I might as well do this night chat. Yeah.
In trying to refresh my memory, I did Casual then Deep then another story, which, like, made sense in that way, but it meant that the last one I did was the one with the most, like crazy intense requirements.
Yeah.
which was really exhausting. And that one really soured me a fair bit. Cause like, I mean, you said like a full day is 50, right?
Yeah.
It's 160 in another story. It's just like, it's just hourglass hungry. It's just a drainer. And like, joining chats individually is also more expensive and all that stuff. And you need 75% and you need these specific ones. It's also like, I think there are things they do that are the like good and bad sort of on both sides of it. Like if you join a chat room, you are in that like you can log in, start a chat room, and then just put your phone to sleep, and it's fine. You're in the chat room unless you run some other intensive program that makes your phone shut down Mystic Messenger. You're set, right? Even if you don't have time just then. And also, I think like I do like sometimes like the missable chats. And I wish there wasn't the FOMO, but I also wish they were better at it sometimes. Like there's the chat in Casual Story where in the first couple of days where Zen is just pranking Yusung early in the morning, right? And just convincing him of stupid shit about like, oh shit, you need to drink a ton of milk, right? Or you're gonna fall into a coma. And it's like, I actually think it's better if you're not there for that chat, because if you're there, like you can't be on Seven's route. If you're doing Casual Story, Seven isn't available. So you're just kind of there either being like, Seven, please stop. Seven, this is mean. Seven, could you stop? Or what? Just sort of silently sitting there and being like, this is weird. It makes more sense for you not to be there. But then also there are chats that'll happen at like 3 a.m. where it is like Yusung logging in and being like, huh? I thought the protagonist would be here. Oh, well, bye. It's like, okay, well, that's just baiting you to pay to join it, you know?
Yeah. We should probably talk about how this game monetizes itself in general. Like, it's not something we usually talk about in this sort of thing, but this is a free-to-play game, and just for context, when Six was discussing that in another story you need 160 hourglasses to resume a chat, or, like, get one you missed, it costs $9 for 300 hourglasses. So, unless you're very much on the game, you basically have to pay more and more. And that's another thing that kind of just encourages you to be on it all the time, because you don't want to be in a situation where you miss too many chats and have to pay money to make up for the deficit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get like currency just by playing the game. It is a pretty slow rate. So like I don't think it's feasible to, like, I was able to pay for another story and that one day and stuff without giving any money. Because I played this game off and on for 5 years. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I don't think it's a reasonable ask.
Yeah, there's a lot, because there's all the like little bad ends and like, off routes that exist, and it feels like part of it is like, in order to get through a lot of the stuff without paying any money, there's also just this certain amount of like, you're probably trying to see every single ending then, rather than like, well, just give me like broadly the full story. Like, there was a point at which I was like, no, I think I do just have to pay money if I want to do, like, the another story stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So, yeah. There's also these moments where, like, there are definitely chats where stuff will, like, more or less get repeated throughout multiple ones to make sure that you see it if you're missing chats. Mm-hmm. And so there's also just this weird thing where you feel that push that you're supposed to be seeing everything. And if there wasn't as much, then I think there would be just a game design where it's okay being like, oh yeah, if you don't see the early morning, maybe you'll see the late night version of it or something, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just having it be like a little bit clearer that like, oh, the tone's going to be like a little bit different, but like there is going to be stuff that's just going to be sort of repeated. Because, yeah, there's definitely some days where, like, you basically have the same, like, a chat about the same thing, like, 3 times, and you're like, okay. I could have missed one of these. It would have been fine.
And I think at its clumsiest, it actually trips over itself. Like in another story, like you have been like all of them, right? Unknown, this hacker has gotten you into, RFA. They did not invite you, right? But like the hacker continues to be a going concern because you're in the same building as him, right? And so people keep being like, can you tell us anything about yourself? Is there any way we can trust you a little better? And there is a point where the hacker stuff really intensifies, starts actively trying to hack it again. And Seven gets really upset and can be like, how are we supposed to trust you when you're in here? Like, do you know the hacker? And you can be like, yeah, I know the hacker. And he's like, are you fucking serious? You basically just admitted you're a threat to this organization. And then the next chat you have, people like, this hacker's weird. Protagonist, do you know anything about this guy? It's like, I just told you I know him. Never comes up again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that did remind me, there was also in the April Fool's route a part where the hacker shows up and you just... The options I did was just bullying him out of the chat. Just being like, so hey, why didn't you respond when I texted you during the prologue part? You didn't text me back. What's up with that? And he's like, what are you talking about? They're like, do you know this guy? And you're like, yeah, I do, but like, it would be major story spoilers, so I can't go into detail right now. And the guy's like, well, you know who I am? It's great. Mm-hmm. You just like fully bully unknown out of the chat.
Oh, that actually reminds me of another fourth wall moment. It just in the main game. I think. Oh yeah, it's when you're on Juman's route and you've just stayed at his house for several days, and because Zen's whole mindset is, oh, guys and girls can't stay in the same space for a while or things will happen. He specifically mentions. He uses the language. What I'm thinking of is above the age rating of this app. It's like, oh, okay. That's one way to get around that, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah. We should probably also mention the party thing too, even though it's probably the most throwaway part of this whole game. Even though it's also crucial to you getting a good end. Essentially, through doing chats, every once in a while, a character will bring up a group and be like, hey, I have an idea. What if we invited this group to the party? And you can either say yes or no. Saying yes gets you an email. And from there, you basically have to respond to someone with the right answer 3 times, and that will get them to join your party. And, like, some of these are very easy just because you're clearly just playing to their ego and just saying the things you know that they'll want to hear. Other times you get a guest like Longcat, and it's fucking impossible to know what to do unless you're looking at a guide, because the difference can be whether the message has a comma or not, because apparently this Longcat is very anal retentive about punctuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just look at guides.
Yeah. There's a way that the emails feel the most like a parody of a lot of dating sim stuff, where it's just like you have to pick the right question, or like the right answer to the question. There's definitely some that just give off this vibe of like, answer me these riddles 3. How long do you like beans stay fresh after you roast them? Mm-hmm. You're like, okay.
Well, yeah. And you haven't even seen where it gets in another story. The guests get weirder.
Wait, weirder than the God of Testament and the God of the Old Testament?
I invited a vampire, the planet Pluto, a bowl of udon noodles, and C++.
Just the language?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also Ticketmaster. Like, we're just out here. It feels like they, at that point, they have fully accepted, actually, this premise was kind of stupid, so whatever.
Yeah, there are definitely ones that are pure joke stuff, too. There's, like, the fake Gordon Ramsay. Yeah. Also, some of the jokes are very bad, like the oil guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely some racist shit. There's the, God, God, I hope you did not see the Curry Factory one.
No, but I did
pretty
see
racist.
the Tetris one. The Tetris
Sure.
one's also pretty racist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Tetris one also, like, at some point, because it involves 707, like, 7 just changes his background into, like, the picture he took during that tangent, and it's like, oh god, this is just gonna be there if I click his profile for the next few hours.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. There was another one that was oh, it's like the other hacker, and you just like have to completely lie about 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically convinced the hacker that 7 is a 70-year-old grandma that goes by a completely different name.
Yeah.
There's also the cleaning fairy in another story. And you have to be like, cleaning fairy, you're not a fairy, you're a member of the KGB.
What?
Wait, what?
It's a whole thing where you're like, they're like, do you know what my secret magic is? And you're like, you break into people's houses and steal and spy on them. And they're like, that's right, Sparkle.
Oh.
It's a lot. I do also want to take a moment, like, so the studio that made this is a studio called Chariots, right? They made a couple of other games on Steam called, like, Dandelion and stuff, right? They have made one other game since Mystic Messenger called The Sum, SSUM. The Sum is terrible. The Sum is, like, it feels like someone told them they would get a bigger market share if their shit wasn't so weird, so they just made an otome game designed like Mystic Messenger, but with no plot, no conspiracy, and the blandest boys you've ever met in your fucking life. And then, seemingly since then, it has gone downhill. They've gone down to having 15 members of staff from having, I believe, a couple hundred. They are just kind of in maintenance mode, collect money for Mystic Messenger, and occasionally they put out new content for the Sum that appears to have been generated via AI. Like, it's just, they've just gone to shit.
Oof. Yeah, because, like, at the height of this game's popularity, like, I was actually looking online for various stories that came out around that time. Like, a year or two later, there was a story published by The Guardian about, like, what it says, like, this game caused an uproar of sorts because there are some people who think otome games are, like, affecting the people who play them in terms of, like, oh, if they play this, they won't be interested in real romantic partners or things like that. And the article is basically just going through the various forums of people who play it and just debunking it, debunking those claims. Like, a lot of people just have this particular kind of affection for the characters where they just straight up say, yeah, I would never want to meet them in real life. I just love the way that they're written, and I think about them all the time, but no real life sort of situation. And, yeah, even during the pandemic, like, well, it's still ongoing, but, like, at the start of the pandemic, you had articles from folks who were playing Mystic Messenger, now that they had enough time to do it. Folks like Caitlin Moore for VG247, and they were basically writing about how, well, this pandemic period will pass at some point, but I'm glad that it was here so I could just, like, get in the same mindset as the characters. And here we are 3 years later, and yeah, still ongoing.
To a certain degree. I mean, I personally don't believe that COVID will ever go away. It is just like the flu. It is just a disease that's going to be in circulation forever now. But, like, I go to work every day, you know? I can leave the house.
Yeah.
Yep. That is true.
But yeah, I mean, it is a shame that it seems like they weren't able to pivot from this into something, you know, bigger and better to sort of carry the success forward, and it seems like we won't ever get that.
Yeah. That's a shame. we can only hope that like other developers have seen Mystic Messenger and were inspired to like make their own games. And just because games take a long time to make, I feel like ever since this game came out, we have seen more of a just general cultural push over in other countries like the US and other places where people are just more open to the idea of otome games, like even the ones that aren't super jokey. Like there's a few that have achieved success like Dream Daddy because of the Game Grumps connection and just the fact that, oh, isn't it a fun idea to just like date a bunch of dads, but it turns out to be a really sweet story. Or
Yeah.
different
Beautiful
things like
Boyfriend is one of the big ones that was like a breakout just because everyone was like, the game where you're dating birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty down on Hatoful Boyfriend around these parts, but
Yeah.
It is funny just to think about the through line between Mystic Messenger, Hatoful Boyfriend, and what's Doki Doki Literature Club, where they were some of the biggest visual novels / dating sort of games, and basically all of them have a fan base who kind of got into it because there's also a dark, fucked up side for all of them. I feel like that became one of the things that they hinged a lot of these games, these specific ones that hit it big in the West on over time. Like but it also got to a point where Boyfriend Dungeon came out like last year, and people were kind of upset over the fact that no matter what you did, there's a stalker character that inserts themselves into your life and you have to fight them like a boss.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we finally reached a point where people don't necessarily want everything to have a dark side when they're playing an otome game, and are kind of pushing back against some of that messaging.
I'd like to think that was the case, right? Because I personally, most of my favorite otome games don't have that, right? Or visual novels, even I should say. But like, also I feel like there is a bit of a distinction, right? Like, okay, how many of us have an ex-girlfriend who went to go start a cult and force-feeding a bunch of people drugs, right? I think that's probably fairly uncommon versus, like, how many of us have known someone who was creepy and possessive about us. That seems like that's hitting a more common trauma is the issue, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think it also comes down to how much of it is a surprise or how much you signal as part of it, because I think another mistake Boyfriend Dungeon made that kind of threw people for a loop is that through the previews and all that, they gave no impression that this was going to be a major part of the game, and then it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to take it to questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, before we do that, do y'all have any just general closing thoughts about this game?
Yeah, I still enjoyed it, although again, this like marathoning 3 routes, not the ideal way to play it. And it's also just like so funny because the first time I played it too, I did the J hero and then I just didn't play it for a while, and I had a friend who played the Zen route. I thought that I had played Zen because I knew like the plot beats, but when I went to actually like open it up, like I was getting new images and everything, and I was like, oh, I never actually did Zen's route. I just heard about it. But yeah, and then like I remember I like came back to it after like a month or two, and I did VII's route, and I was just like, this is a whole different like just the absolute swing. Because Jakey's route is so, like, you don't care anything about what's happening with the RFA, basically, other than, like, you're gonna have a party. It's just the most, like, normal, here's this person. And VII's route just, you know, is as deep as you get into all of that and other story stuff without having to do all the Hourglass stuff. So I just remember that, like, whiplash when I played it. I think it is still part of what's, like, funny about this game. Because there are definitely people who probably just played one route and have, like, a very small idea of what the game is, what the story is. So
yeah. Hell, I played 3 routes and I did not know how deep the rabbit hole went.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, of course, I wrote the summary. No one else wrote it for me. But it does amuse me that I managed to not bring up the main character until at paragraph 7.
Well, the main character is such a nothing of a character. Like, even compared to other otome games we've covered for this show, like, you often get more of a backstory for them. Here it's just literally, I downloaded this app and walked into this apartment because a stranger told me to, and now I'm here.
There's a way in particular that, like, Mystic Messenger wants you to just be you playing the game, but then there are moments where they just have to, like, break that level. There has to be stuff that they're saying about who you are and, like, showing you and everything. That ends up being, like, the first time that I, like, saw me, like a picture of me in the game, you know, was not the icon that I'd set. I was like, that's not me. What the fuck?
and I feel like its use of that is pretty flawed, not just because you see the character in the art, but like from the beginning, as Seven puts it in like the first chat room, the very first chat room of the game, you are immediately established as a character who was kidnapped by your own legs.
That's such a good line from it.
You have to play to a certain degree, a pretty significant airhead, a very nice, sweet girl who is an idiot. And in Juman's ending, there is a point where Seven doesn't have much to do with the rest of the ending. Juman's doing all this stuff, Jaehee's involved, and then Seven pulls you aside and is like, hey, we're really glad that we met you and that events went this way. Don't ever fucking do that again. If some stranger calls you and tells you to go somewhere, you say no, okay?
Yep.
So I feel like, you know, you can't be that much of a blank canvas given some of the things that you have to take for granted for the story to happen.
Yeah. I also laugh at the part where you're supposed to enter the code and then like you look at the door and it's just like all 8s or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could just play a normal keypad in this image.
And it makes it all the more funnier when Seven's like, how did you break in? This place is top security.
It's also really great, just like some of the alternate options you have to be even vaguely normal during the opening, where it's like, great, go to this address. Okay, go ahead and open the door and go inside. And you'd be like, shouldn't I knock? And like, oh, right, sure, okay, sure, why not?
I think if you like resist too much too, you like get kidnapped right away.
Yeah,
I think that's like one of the endings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you're too sensible, yeah.
Yeah. It's also great when you first join and you're just like, I came here to chat with cute boys. I downloaded this game to chat with cute boys. What's going on? Why is story happening?
Yeah, overall I had a decent time with the story and what it was doing. I just wish I hadn't marathoned it because the way it affected my life was seriously disruptive. And feel free to play it when you have time. Just make sure never to play it in a row because it'll just fuck you up.
Yeah, take healthy breaks. Nintendo said it best.
Yeah. Just when you know you're gonna have like a week and a half that are chill, you know, work's gonna be slow. Those kind of times.
Yeah. And just if you're gonna do another story, just save up the hourglasses. Don't try and do it legit.
It's time to get to questions, I think.
밝게 빛나는 태양처럼 언제나 나는 여기에 있어 어둠이 져도 사라질 수 없는 걸 하얀 세상에 색을 물들인 참 거룩한 사람이던 너 사진 속 웃고 있던
You can email us us at emails@scanlinemedia.com. And first one came in from Emrys. Hi, hey all. Not a huge otome connoisseur. Do you have any recommendations of these games to check out? Also, the idea of Mystic Messenger's real-time premise makes me think of Subterfuge. Y'all want to play some Subterfuge? Gonna answer the second one first. No, because we have played Subterfuge in the past, and it was even more disruptive than Mystic Messenger because you just start doubting your friends in a really awful way, and also people can just be making moves on you while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Emrys is a Emrys. I consider Emrys a friend. Emrys is cool, which is why I don't want to just say, yo, fuck you for saying that. But, like, Subterfuge is a toxic game for ruining people's friendships, and I hate it.
Yeah. As for the recommendations, a lot of mine are going to be games that we've covered on here just because, like, we've tended to have some pretty good hit rates with otome games in general. Hakuoki is probably my favorite of them, just because there's a lot going on there, and I also enjoy the way that you're learning a little bit about the specific period of Japan with the Shinsengumi, even though a lot of it is obviously romanticized. I also really like Code Realize as this weird sort of steampunk story where you're meeting all sorts of literary characters as they ferry you around, and your skin is also somehow poison. Other than that, Psychedelica of the Ashen Hawk and Dream Daddy, also great games.
We also colored Bustafellows. I think Bustafellows is pretty good. I think there are definitely some better routes than others in that one. I would also recommend Nightshade, which is one where you play as a kunoichi, a lady ninja. That one is pretty cool. And then just classic, you can get these fan localized in English now. The Tokimeki Memorial Girls Side games on DS are really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I would also recommend those ones. Especially like the ones where you have like, it's like a big calendar. You know, the ones that like Persona is the most just pulling from.
Right.
And you're like deciding what to do each day and stuff. I do enjoy that like abstraction of time and like, you see a little snippet of a relationship, but it's like developing over time. I also, I think like the first two real dating sims, like Otome especially, that I played back in the day were Sweet Fuse and Princess Debut, neither of which I necessarily like. I don't remember them enough to be like, those were good, other than I was just playing them being like, oh, it's a game where you date boys. Like, but I remember Princess Debut also has that like rhythm game element to it. And then I've heard good things, but I've not played Jack Sean, or like Jack Sean. It's like a newer otome dating sim with rhythm game elements. So, and that like came out like this year in the US. So
yeah, I've
not gotten around to it, but yeah,
not very much.
I've not heard much about like what actually happens in the game. Just that the people that I know that have played it have been like, oh yeah, this one's worth checking out. So
yeah. The genre is surprisingly alive on Switch, I will say.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy overall with the number of visual novels in general that get ported over to the Switch.
Yeah. Next question we have here from Kyrie. Starts off with our tasting. So, we managed to not bring this up at all during the podcast, but major, romance interests, LOL, bacon, hacker, 707 is obsessed with honey Buddha chips and pepper PhD. This is a stand-in for Dr. Pepper, the soda, and honey butter chips, a type of Korean chip that we all have a bag of in front of us right now. Let's crack into it and give it a try.
All right.
This is a tear. You want to grab a corner and tear.
Oh yeah.
okay.
If you
Try from the middle like American chips, it will never fucking open.
Yeah.
It's bulletproof.
Now, I have had these before, but I haven't had the combo with Dr. Pepper, so...
Oh, that's a weird taste.
So I unfortunately fucked up and don't have Dr. Pepper, so I'll have to leave that part of it to y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these chips, weirdly enough, taste like cheddar popcorn to some degree. And I don't know that the Dr. Pepper is affecting that taste much, but it's a pleasant enough combination. I just need to think of it as the cheddar popcorn and not think of it as chips, because if I think of chips tasting like this, it feels weird.
There's a way that it's like a mild Chicago mix. Chicago mix being the cheddar and caramel, like mixed popcorn. Because you do have that like a little bit more sweetness than you sometimes get with like a cheese popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so the specifically, it's like a fermented butter that they use, right?
Yeah.
I do think the primary flavor is like that butter, but you get like there's a little bit of like tang to it, or like a tiny like sour zip at like one point before it gets sweet again.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very like mellow and smooth chip.
Yeah. It also kind of so in Chicago there's a honey butter fried chicken where they do like the honey butter stuff with the fried chicken, and they do this cornbread, and it kind of tastes like the cornbread. It's again a little bit more mild than the cornbread, but I think they have like that same honey butter sort of flavor in that cornbread.
Yeah.
The Dr. Pepper's not adding much.
No.
I mean, it's not bad, but it's like, I want something that's more salty and not sweet from the chip if I'm going to have a sweet soda, you know?
Yeah, I feel like actually I just want to drink this have this with ice water.
Yeah.
But I do think
Or
the chips are good.
Yeah.
I coffee might be too much because this is so mild, but maybe just like a black tea with like nothing in it.
That might work.
Yeah.
Definitely feels like an acquired taste, but one I could get used to over time.
Especially if you got paid entirely in honey butter chips for one of your hacking jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A hacking job, like air quotes around hacking, because it involved him driving after a loaded truck with a gun. Now on to the rest of our questions here. What does pairing a food to a character do for their characterization? Besides cases where it's clearly marketing, what kind of benefit to storytelling is provided by food associations? Do you have any favorite examples of food being associated with a character? What food would you want us to be associated with?
I'm not sure how much the honey butter chips add to Seven's character, other than him just being a elite hacker who eats junk food and occasionally makes himself sick because all he's eaten is junk food.
Yeah. It's like with Seven in particular, it's like the junk food, and then it's just like make it a little bit quirkier by making it a specific chip and specific soda. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think in general, and I think in Seven's case as well, I actually think it's subtractive. It feels like... Did either of you ever read the classic children's book Bread and Jam for Francis?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, it makes them feel childish to me, right? Like, if you ask me, like, is there a food you associate with me? I'm sure there are some friends who are like, oh, like, you've cooked Eggs Benedict for me. I would say Eggs Benedict. But I'm not eating Eggs Benedict every day, right? Because people don't do that, generally speaking, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it ends up being like reductive to a point of making a character feel cartoonish and unreal and takes away from them.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, if you make the food a little too showy, it can amplify the character a bit much. It makes more sense to me, like, if you have a character that is very strict or prim, like, a game that does this really well, I think, is Witch on the Holy Night, just because you have Alice's tastes that are very particular, to the point where at one point Aoko gets her like bottled water, and Alice is like, no, the tap water in Japan is divine. I'm never give me bottled water again.
I feel like in like original Persona 4, Chie likes meat, but it comes up a few times, and it's just like, oh, this is just a part of her character.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mind it, but then like every other Persona thing, like Persona 4 thing that came after that, her entire personality is that she likes meat and eats lots of meat. And it's just like, what's happening here?
Yeah, they just get completely Flandersized.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like extra bizarre because like it feels like that happens even more with 7 when you do 7's route. Because now you're just hanging out with him eating honey butter chips.
Yeah.
So I do think one where it's, I mean, one where there's like a food association, but it's not a specific food. I think it often works when it's not like super specific. Is I always think of Brad Pitt's character in the Ocean's movies, just like eating constantly. Anytime he's on screen, he's eating. Except during heists, but like just constantly has like a burger or whatever. That's just great. That just gives me like a sense of this character. I feel like a bunch of other Brad Pitt stuff has done that, but I especially associate it with Oceans. So
Sure. I also, one of my favorite characters just in fiction is Charlotta from Grand Blue. And she is this tiny little lady who is the captain of the knights. And she speaks very properly and very respectfully. And she is very good at her job. She's a great swords person. And she's very responsible. And her only concession to the fact that she looks like a child is the fact that her favorite food is basically Happy Meals. And it's like, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other part of this is what food would you want to be associated with, and mine's probably mapo tofu, just because it's one of the few dishes I know how to make, and also it's this really solid mix of flavors.
Well, you're welcome for teaching you that then, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Six.
I feel like there's maybe like a couple for me. I make a really good saag paneer, so I could see that being one. Especially because during summer, I do just make it a lot because we have like a community-supported agriculture box that we get, and there's just constantly greens that I have to get through, and saag is one of the best ways to do it. And the other is, I know there are multiple people that specifically think of Lebkuchen when it comes to me, which is like a traditional German gingerbread. And I make it the traditional way with potash, which there's a reason why we don't cook with potash anymore. And you have to like age the dough for like months before you bake it. So I make it in like November 1st, bake for like Yule, like, you know, towards the end of December. And it is good. It like, you get like this nice, sort of honeycomb texture and everything. So that's probably another associate, but it's not like I'm eating that all the time. I make it once a year.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I do probably make Eggs Benedict on average once a month. So like, it's not like an unfair characterization of me. So yeah, I mean, I think just generally you could do hollandaise for me. I love a hollandaise sauce.
It's a good sauce.
Yeah. Next email comes in from Jay. Just gonna summarize this one a little bit, just because we're running up on it. It's getting late for everyone here. Basically, the email goes into like how Mystic Messenger had really had a cultural moment, and there was a point in time around the time the game came out where people just saw a bunch of different genres and the ways smartphone games could be played before they all kind of just got boiled down to the specific gacha or other types of free-to-play games we see everywhere. And if you could change history and revive one failed or forgotten mobile to become the new template for modern mobile gaming, what would you pick?
For me, I think it would be Song Summoner, which was, I think it was like, I don't even know if it was ever on mobile phones. I know it was on iPod. and it was like a like Monster Rancher sort of idea of like your music on your iPod would become the fodder to like create the units that you would have for the game.
Oh, that's cool.
And like obviously nobody's going to do this anymore because like gotcha is how you're going to do the polls, not I added more music to my my like phone. Most people don't even have MP3s on their phone anymore. They're just like using Spotify or whatever. But yeah, I just wish something that was like engaging with the phone as a thing that's doing way more than just like playing the games. And you have a bunch of other data on that. Would be fun. So
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Square Enix too, because like out of all the various publishers, I feel like they have the worst track record for like putting games on iOS and then delisting them a few years later.
yeah.
I think my pick is actually the Doom RPG. I don't know if anyone else played this on the early like cell phone days.
Yeah.
This is like a first-person roguelike, and like a true roguelike, right? Like enemies move when you move, right? And so it is like wizardry, but you have a shotgun. And I think like the game moves when you move is a great way to do mobile games where you're very distracted, and it's like, okay, you can look away at any time. It doesn't matter. It was a full game. And also, I miss the period these days. Well, not these days. This has been true for like a decade now, right? I'm a little out of touch with this statement. But like the modern idea of like, what if we added RPG elements to everything, I think is less cool than what if we took every franchise and made an RPG of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It especially during that period of time was really interesting because not only did they have a Doom RPG, they made several actually. In addition to Doom RPG and Doom RPG 2, they had a traditional fantasy one called Orcs and Elves, and they also had a Wolfenstein one. The Wolfenstein one was the one that I played a whole lot, and they kind of made it even goofier than 3D in certain ways. Like, you do a lot more with using chickens as weapons and all that.
Maybe I played those Wolfenstein than I thought, because what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I think that might be a Wolfenstein RPG invention, but I think they do things to like make it more goofy just because it's a phone game that kids might get, and they want to have less of the whole fascist imagery in it.
Sure. I guess that's fair.
As for me, like, I've always been like a huge fan of Simigo. They're one of the few app developers from that particular period of time that are still going, still making new things. The one that always really stuck out to me was Device 6 that got released in 2013. It's this really clever spy story that is presented like a book you're reading on your phone, except you end up solving puzzles using novel ways on the screen and navigating through the text itself. It's a really cool short game, and I think it might still be up on app stores, so you should check it out sometime.
I don't have a take. I know I must just be wrong about this one, but I hated Device 6.
Fair enough.
I've never played that one, but did they do Yearwalk?
They did.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That was, I think, the big one that I played from them.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I was like, I remember too, because there's like the companion app that was like giving you just information about like, you know, the myths it was based on, but then like if you actually read through it, you would get stuff that would give you like secret stuff in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. It was definitely like, especially when it came out, like a level of just like, oh, you're like doing an adventure game on the phone in a way that just people are not doing. So
yeah, and like when you got to an ending in Yearwalk, it gave you a code to enter on the companion app, and it turned into this whole thing that basically guided you to the true ending. That was
Yeah.
pretty neat too.
Yeah. Yeah, the like way that the companion app and the main game interacted was cool. So
Yeah. These days they kind of branched out of mobile games. Like Sayonara Wild Hearts was a thing that did premiere initially on Apple Arcade, but it kind of released everywhere just because it was this very evocative, visually stimulating take on a rhythm game / album. And they have a mystery game that's upcoming that skips phones entirely. It's going to be Switch and Windows. So it's interesting to see even them, after they spent like decades within that space, deciding, okay, let's move over to consoles now.
yeah.
M writes in. First off, talking about how they're never going to play this game because it seems like such a ridiculous burden. Also, like, let me ask some otome questions, and then it's like, I think it's an otome game. I don't actually know. Like, yes, it's an otome game. First question: what's the type of character you never get to date in this kind of game you wish they had? Second, would you rather have more of a like distinct personality for the main character or more of a blank slate? M is not a big fan of the blank slates. And then finally, more broadly, what kind of stories do you wish visual novels would tell that aren't just dating game, death game, murder mystery, or some combo of the three? Congrats on climbing this mountain. Good luck with next month's mountain. Maybe play a short game once in a while.
I'm going to break the fourth wall myself a little bit here and look at our schedule for the next few months. And
No.
Unfortunately...
No, it's going to be a while. In fact, I might want to have a conversation after this and be like, hey, Jen, you think we could shuffle things around? Do you think I could have a break?
Well, the good news is in March, we're going to have like a game that is only 5 hours long. But yeah.
Is it only that? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, at least that's what the How Long to Beat said when I typed into it. It could be a situation where that is the early access time, but I'll do more research on it and make sure that it's actually that short.
I just want to point out Final Fantasy 15, Majora's Mask, Metal Gear Solid 2, not that long. Mystic Messenger, our next game is long. Our game after that is long.
Yeah.
Let me sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I agreed to the schedule, and a lot of this was me pushing for these games. It just sometimes it settles into an order where you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Monkey paw curls.
Yeah, a little bit.
In terms of the questions, type of character I'd want to date, I feel like workaholic is a thing that you see as an archetype for some of this stuff, but I think it'd be interesting to focus on one that is really trying to make it as like a streamer, YouTuber, sort of like just someone who has to continuously put themselves out there every day. And I think you could weave an interesting story about how you end up becoming part of their quote-unquote content too, and just like the mixed feelings you both have about that happening together. Like, there'd be some interesting ground there. In terms of blank slate or more fleshed out character, I don't mind either one. The issue I really have with otome in particular is that oftentimes the main character is completely inactive in the story themselves that they're in. That, or like some of them, like my main problem with Hakuoki, as much as I love it, is that you're essentially given a sword and you have to pose as a member of the Shinsengumi, and then you do no fighting. Like, even the point where you get trained to fight, you do no fighting.
There's the ending where your boyfriend who trains people to fight is like, you know what? I understand your resolve. You need to do this. You need to kill your evil dad yourself. Let's go to the mountains and train. And you go to the mountains and have a little training arc. And then you meet up with your dad and he pushes you aside. He's like, I can't have you fighting. Bro, what do we do?
Yeah. In terms of stories I wish visual novels would cover, I think it'd be interesting to see travelogues, sort of situation, just like something more globe hopping. I'd love to see more historical fiction in general, not just self-insert date all the shinsengumi or things like that. Just I love it when a game dives into a certain period of time and I just get to learn more about that period of time through experiencing it through the eyes of a character. And I also think it'd be neat to have like a choice-driven one where you're playing an artist and you more or less guide them through their career and decide what kind of career they're going to have in the end.
I feel like I want, like, this is kind of inspired by an answer, not an answer, the thing you brought up earlier, Niamh. I think I want a character where, like, it isn't like you convincing them to love, like, you know, like very much the root is like, in most otome games is like at the end them being like, I've realized I'm desperately in love with you. I would like one where very early on it's like, okay, we're dating, let's take it slow, and the game is you just sort of, you know, having a relationship in a like measurably paced, reasonable way.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest for me with like type. I mean, it's a little bit story, but also just type of character is like so many otome games end with like, and then you decide that you're dating or whatever, and there's like the kiss, and I'm like, just like give me the one that's actually about dating someone, and you're like 5 years into the relationship.
And like, also, don't give me someone desperately in love with me. Don't use the word desperate at all to describe our relationship. Maybe. Yeah, you know. That sounds great to me. Fuck blank slates. I hate blank slates. Get all blank slates out of my fucking life.
Yeah, worth pointing out that one of the games I recommended earlier, Psychedelica of the Ashen Hawk, one of the reasons why it's so good is that the character you're playing has so much personality.
Actually, as far as autonomy, there's a game that came out last year, I want to say, Birishana Rising Flower of Genpei, which is another like Warring States era Japan, right? And your main character is like a warlord who is secretly a woman, and you just kick people's asses all the time, and it's kind of fun. So you have some autonomy there, and that's nice. And then last question. What kind of stories? Someone needs to pick up the torch that has been hinted at with Crusader Kings and with Total War 3 Kingdoms, and have more visual novels that are like political sims. I know we did get that one we covered. What was it?
Long Live the Queen?
No, that one's not really that political.
Suzerain?
Yeah, Suzerain. We did get Suzerain, and that game was pretty cool. Though it was I like almost more like text adventure in ways, like Twine Game. I would love to see more games that are like, more like political or like military management visual novels. That sounds sick to me.
Yeah, I think I mentioned for the type of character, I think just like one where you're it's more that you're just in the relationship for a while would be nice. I'm okay with blank slates when you have like choices early on that are just very clearly signaling they're like, this person has a personality still, even if it's like a little bit, you know, where like you just get like enough of like, oh, they're just like always gonna have like some really bratty answers or something, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm okay with it when it's like really, really blank slate, or when it's like the full like you can just really swing in like how you're playing them. I find that less interesting than like, even if it's still fairly blank slate, there's still like a bit of a personality that's being conveyed by all the options. But yeah, I think I would prefer having more like, here's a specific character that you're playing as and inhabiting, or at least like, you know, you could maybe have that and then like have the stuff where you can build in a little bit of, I know that like adds to the complexity of the game, but you know, you could like add in certain like choose backstory things or whatever, but have that like actually matter. Because it's just so weird how much it's like there are just moments in Mystic Messenger. Well, you'll like bring up, and you'll be able to say something about your past, and you're like, that's not going to matter though. The game can't account for this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was only able to say some vague thing of like, oh yeah, I also don't like Christmas that much or whatever, you know.
Mhm.
So
I also find it weird, like, I don't know, maybe this is just me, or not. I doubt it's just me. It's never just you. There are too many fucking people on Earth. But you know what I mean, right? Like, I find it way easier to have emotional buy-in and, like, even, like, project myself into a character than a blank slate. A blank slate just feels empty to me. It's way easier for me to be like, I empathize and feel, you know, the position of this main character versus, you know, a blank slate.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like a lot of, you know, like, lots of people have played Persona games. If you tell someone, like, what's the Persona character you identify with, I feel like it's a very low chance that they're going to be like, oh, the protagonist of Persona 4, or whatever. Or, you know, Joker, that's the one I identify. No, it's going to be, you know, I identify with, like, Mitsuru or something. You're like, yeah,
Sure.
of course, because there's an actual personality for you to, like, connect to.
Mhm.
So, yeah. In terms of stories that I wish visual novels would tell, one, I wish that there was more dating sims that just like really did an erotic thriller kind of thing where it's not about like the cute date at the end. It's just weird erotic thriller energy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. The other thing, and especially when there was like this boon of Twine games, I feel like there's a little bit of stuff happening in this space. But I would love to see more that are like these kind of small, like intimate things where people are telling like something autobiographical or something. I think a lot of that stuff would be cool to see and like to get like the larger visual novel sort of treatment, rather than like the Twine games was like so text based. So, especially because I think there's just always something interesting in like taking your own, like trying to tell your own story about your own life and then like putting in things where you're going to have like various routes and everything. I always think that could be interesting. So yeah, I want to see like more stuff explore that where you're like trying to tell a true story about something that happened, but then still entering on all of this choice and like different routes and things. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. From Crystal, you are stuck in a Saw game with the Mystic Messenger Boys. Who do you sacrifice to survive, and who sacrifices you?
I sacrifice V, and V also sacrifices V, so we're good.
yeah, I mean, I guess I was going to say Yusung, because he's just going to be so gullible that it'll be easy to do. And I think the person who would sacrifice me would be Juman.
I feel like it's, if you can't say that just V would sacrifice himself, it's Juman, but after a really long debate about who is more useless, you or Yusung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I also said I'd sacrifice Yusung just because easily gullible. And
You married him!
It would be so easy.
It's true. It's true.
And in terms of someone who would sacrifice me, I think they would feel really torn up about it, but I bet 707 would do it.
Maybe. I mean, the real answer is Juman wouldn't do it. Jae would do it because Juman would order her to.
Yeah. Juman would make the decision, but Jae would be the one who would do the sacrificing.
Assistant Kang shoves 6 into the wood chipper.
But yeah, the thing with 7 is, at least in all the routes that I saw, his story more or less ends with him realizing who Ray is, and he just kind of has not only does he break down a bit, he also decides the way to get through it is, I'm just gonna pretend this never happened and walk away and make sure no one else talks about this ever. So I assume if I ever became a liability for him on that scale, he would just be like, okay, I'm cutting all ties. You're getting sacrificed.
I mean, that's because he's sad, not because he's like, man, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd feel really bad about himself if he sacrificed you. I think he still might do it, but he'd feel really, really bad about it. He'd have some intense Catholic guilt about that one.
And if it's not just the boys, I mean, Rika is so eager to sacrifice you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Chomping at the bit to murder you.
She doesn't need the Saw game.
No. There's a great bit in another story where you have started to see doubts in her puppet Ray, and she's like, "Wow, this is really impressive. I really think we should just work together. Don't you want to work together?" And that chat ends, and you get a VN segment, where it's just her alone in her room, and she's like, "As soon as he does what I want, I'm going to fucking murder that stupid girl." And you're like, okay.
Damn.
Another question here from Wudaba. Hey, Novel Squad. Inspired by the right turn into evil cult this game takes, what's your favorite wild tonal or plot shift in a video games?
I think mine has to be Pentiment. And I'm going to do this without spoiling. I'm going to try not spoiling as much of the story as I can. But basically, for the first 2/3 of this game, you're playing as a particular character who is coming in with a somewhat detached view of the place he's in. Like, he does have connections, but they're somewhat distant. For the third act, it's a completely different character. It's several years into the future, and it's personal on a level where it's no longer a dramatic situation where you're looking for whoever murdered this person. You're basically dealing with the consequences of, okay, this person got mortally wounded. Yeah, this person very important to me. They're going to die eventually. And I just have to make the most of my life until then. Maybe I'll try finding the killer in that time, but even if I do, there's not much point to it because this person's gonna die anyway. And it really adds this morose tone to the game that the first 2 acts were kind of hinting at, but by the time it hits you in the third act, it's like, God damn, this is really sad.
I think one that stands out to me is Echo the Dolphin. The game that you start playing where you're like, oh, I'm just a little dolphin swimming around, having dolphin adventures, and then it just goes like bizarre sci-fi as it continues on. So definitely stands out.
Yeah, I think Echo the Dolphin in particular, like, it's a game where I feel like a lot of people saw the first level or two and just put it in their head as, okay, I'm shelving this away as the dolphin game. And then when I hear it being discussed by people who actually played most of it, it takes on a completely different tone.
Yeah. There's also like a key like plot twist, plot shift thing that happens in Chrono Cross that I do think is just great.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not nearly as much of like a wild tonal shift. So, and it makes sense very thematically with everything that's going on in that game. So.
This is kind of different. I felt like I didn't have an answer that I really loved for this one, but there are times when there's like some like diverting expectation pretty basically. So like Yakuza 5 becomes the game you expect by the end of it, right? But when you start out the game, Kiryu is the main character and he's in hiding, and the gameplay consists of like running errands and playing this taxi driver minigame, and you're like, oh, this is Sega, we're gonna do crazy taxi. No, this is the most realistic taxi driver simulator where your tips depend on like how comfortable your passenger is, how well you're following the traffic laws, and like separately while driving playing a minigame to make interesting small talk with them. And that's it for a couple of hours before it starts being fights again. I'm like, that's terrific. That's so good.
Yeah, the whole history of Yakuza, like as a game franchise, is wild tonal shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of them usually end up in the same place, but that journey, they always take a different route there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best answer I got.
All right. I'll go ahead and read this last email, which seems laser targeted at Niamh here. From Amelia. In a Nana dating sim, who has the best route and who has the most guide required route?
So one, there is a PlayStation 2 Nana dating sim. I have not played it because it's never been translated into English. At some point, if I learn enough Japanese, I want to try and play it. It has the wild premise of you are a third Nana who moves in next door to the other two Nanas. And then I think that you can date Takumi in it, which just means that you would send the rest of like that story off on an entirely different path. But I think probably, I mean, best route, there's definitely some subjectivity here. I would think that it would be the Osaki Nana route. But I could see arguments for like Yasu as well. I think there could be some cool stuff with Yasu. If you're like actually pushing him to stop being such a weenie and actually like take initiative and do things for himself for once, that could be good. But I think the most guide required would be Osaki Nana, because you really got to navigate all that trauma. There's so much trauma to navigate there. She's gonna like repeatedly like freak out about something and have some like trauma attack and run off. You just gotta really have a route there. A guide there for that route. So yeah, that's my thought. Takumi's easy mode, you know?
I don't know anything about Nana, and I know that's wrong, and I know I should. But
yeah, definitely one of those things that's still on my reading list, but haven't quite gotten to yet.
It is great. It's like heavy though. That's my one thing. Yeah. I mean, it starts out like very nice, but it gets pretty deep because it being like her longest running thing. She just like really starts digging into the characters and what's going on with them. So fantastically written characters. But I know a lot of people who are like, it's just sad. And I'm like, yeah, it is, but I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes you just need a sad story.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to do it for questions. And once again, the email is emails@scanlinemedia.com. We're always happy to take retroactive questions for the various things we cover. So if you happen to think of another Mystic Messenger question, you can always send it in. We'll cover it next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone for emailing in.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And that's going to do it for 2023. But we're starting 2024 off with quite a bang, because Emrys will be joining us for... Let me clear my throat so I make sure I get this pronunciation right, or at least I try. Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Wille zur Macht.
Most people say Xenosaga, but otherwise you did great.
There's like a little bit of a at the end, Wille. But
I didn't know that. All right. I would have fucked it up too.
I mean, also I have like because my dad's from Germany, so I also have the Berliner accent. So I don't say Macht, I say Macht. You gotta like really have the hairball going.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's another long-term project, I guess. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Good luck with next month's mountain, as Em put it.
Yeah. I really enjoy the Xenosaga games, so especially 1 and 3. There's some like good stuff in 2, but I think it's like the low point of the series. So
yeah, my only thing is I'm kind of bad at JRPGs, so and I was looking online for tips, and everyone was like, I play a lot of JRPGs, and this is one of the hardest I've ever played, so I've been looking pretty closely at an old Brady Games strategy guide, as I've been playing parts of it.
Yeah.
Jen's bad at JRPGs. She's like, a fire demon, I should use fire on it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of cluing you into stuff like weaknesses that exist in some either in Xenosaga.
Everyone is weak to Arcanon.
Yeah, I also feel like anytime you like go up against the Gnosis, you're like, well, fuck.
True.
Which feels proper for the like what's actually happening in that game, but
Oh yeah.
Enjoy the weird homoeroticism between Shion and her robot that she built to be a really hot lady.
We were talking about this in the group DM, but it's like the powerful energy of Shion building a big robot dom girlfriend for herself and then programming it not to be interested in her. It's like, girl, love yourself.
Look, she just likes it when they play hard to get.
I guess.
Really hard to get.
Niamh, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Been really great to have you on. Great to talk about a game that has been like a game that I've thought about wanting to do on here for a long time. Keep being like, I can't make Jen do that, and then I was like, hey, the guest wants to do it too. Deal with it, Jen.
Yeah, I was just like barely throwing out. I was like Mystic Messenger. There's like that Ringo. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard good things. The like Friends of Ringo Ishikawa or something. I forget yeah. The other one that I thought of like immediately after I said that, but you immediately jumped on Mystic Messenger, was Kenkabancho Badass Rumble, which is a bizarre.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That game's all right.
You extremely have to choose whether or not you want to do the story or the game. You cannot do both.
I mean, listen, maybe if you want to come back sometime, play a mini game so that we can successfully say "cry to your mama."
First, you have to stare Menchie beams.
It's true. So why don't you give everybody the full plug zone? Give them the works.
Yeah. So you can follow me at FoxMomNia on Twitter or basically any social media platform I'm on. Twitter's like the main one I use. It's also like Letterboxd and AniList, where those aren't like really social media stuff, but I like, people can see what I'm watching through that stuff, I guess. If you go to exportaud.io, that takes you to the Export Audio Patreon. But even if you don't want to like support the network right away, there's links to all the shows there. So it's just like the quick way to get it. Also, my pinned tweet on Twitter has links. So Ghost Divers is an anime podcast. So named because one of our rules is we don't want to cover any anime that's like actively relevant. We don't want to do something that's like currently in the zeitgeist a bunch. So we're starting to get to the point where we're like, we might be able to do the rebuild movies. Nobody's talking about the rebuild movies anymore.
God, that was the greatest gift of the rebuild movies, is how quickly we stopped talking about them.
Me and Connor have like opposite opinions about End of Evangelion. I do not like that movie. Connor really likes it. And so I'm like, I need to know what you think of the rebuild movies. Like I have to go through this journey and see where you are, where you're at with them. So we have to do it at some point because he's not seen them at all. But yeah, during the SAG-AFTRA strike, we decided to pivot away from like even doing struck streaming services. So we were going to do the Nana anime, which I think is on like Netflix and all sorts of places. And so instead we pivoted to the manga, which I was happy to do because I like the manga more than the anime anyway. So we're currently working through that. It's definitely going to be our longest season ever. And I'm enjoying it a lot. We're like doing really deep dive stuff. But it's also been a tiring season just because it's like a heavy work and we are like going one volume at a time at this point. And it's 21 volumes. So it'll be a good while that we're in there. But people can check out our other shows, like seasons. Our Tennis season was really good. And then especially like our recent ones, like the Psychopaths one and the Iron-Blooded Orphan ones. Those ones I would recommend as well. Ornate Stairwells, me and my friend Autumn, and we talk about movies. So we like watch a movie together and then talk about it. But also it's like just a big sprawling podcast because we literally just sit in the same room and talk into a mic and kind of forget that it's there. So it just like goes all over. We mostly talk about stuff that we've watched in movies in general, but it can get real freewheeling sometimes. So it's a lot of fun. And then Around the Long Fire is on Abnormal Mapping. So that's abnormalmapping.com/Around the Long Fire. I think it's Around the Long Fire gets you there. But yeah, that one, we are currently reading through the Nibelungen lead, but we started doing Icelandic sagas, and it's kind of just becoming more of a classics podcast in general. And we generally try not to do like a ton of reading, so we don't want it to be a heavy homework show. So we talk about like whatever we read for a little bit, and then we talk about whatever else. So that's where most of my gaming talk ends up when I am gaming. And yeah, it's also like the main time that Em and I are just like hanging out, actually talking and not like texting in a group chat. So, and then the last one is Pondering Putan with Aji Shirotaro and Hachimitsu Boy, which is me and Connor, my co-host from Ghost Divers. Since Ghost Divers is like the most, we're like here doing work, deep diving, analyzing stuff all the time. We wanted a podcast where we were just hanging out and goofing off. So we're reading the Cromartie High School manga at the same rate that it was published in the weekly magazine, which means it's like currently 8 pages a week. And sometimes we talk about the manga, but often we just don't. But we're always kind of riffing on like the humor of the manga. So, yeah, it has been described by M as a podcast of deceit. But I think there's a lot of trust in that podcast between me and Connor. Every time we go in, hit record, and start the timer for 30 minutes. So, yeah, those are the shows that I do. Main things to check out. So,
excellent. We'll have some links down in the show notes if you want to check that stuff out. As far as us, this is a patron show. You already know. Thank you. So we don't have to do anything.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And until next time, quick save.
Quick save.
quick save.